Let's examine one of history's most profound mysteries, one that has captivated the minds of scholars and believers for centuries. What if the central story of the Christian world, passed down through generations, about the final resting place of Jesus of Nazareth, doesn't reveal the whole truth? This question, almost blasphemous in its nature, challenges established notions, forcing us to consider the possibility of another, hidden and carefully guarded secret. Historical chronicles, as we know, are replete with gaps and omissions, pages that remain blank, or words once spoken but later erased, rewritten, or carefully concealed beneath centuries of piety. This is not uncommon for ancient narratives, where authenticity and canonicity were often shaped not only by facts, but also by political and religious expediency, forming a narrative beneficial to certain circles. For 2 millennia, the official version has remained unquestioned. After an agonizing crucifixion, Jesus' body was, it is claimed, placed in a tomb borrowed from Joseph of Arimathea, its entrance sealed by a massive stone. 3 days later, according to Gospel accounts, the chamber was found completely empty, a cornerstone of Christian doctrine, symbolizing resurrection and eternal life. For millions of followers, this gaping emptiness is not merely a fact, but a sacred symbol, a foundation of faith, signifying the triumph of life over death and the promise of eternal salvation. Yet, for the inquisitive historian, the meticulous archaeologist, or anyone seeking the hidden facets of truth, this emptiness represents not a miracle, but rather a profound, unresolved question, demanding answers that were never provided. A daring thought emerges. Could this emptiness have been not divine intervention, but a carefully guarded secret? Is it possible that beneath the carefully polished surface of the canonical narrative lies another, fragile and forbidden story, waiting for its moment to be discovered? For centuries, the Church, wielding immense spiritual and political authority, zealously guarded this version of events. For if the tomb had not been empty, if a body, a real burial, a place that could be found and investigated, had been discovered within it, this would radically alter not only the dogmatic foundations, but also the very perception of Christianity. Such a discovery would strip it of its aura of inviolable mystery, reducing the sacred to the earthly and the divine to mere mortal existence, which could undermine the faith of millions. However, history, as we know, does not yield to complete oblivion or destruction. The whispers of alternative versions and omissions can survive even where the fires of the Inquisition and censorship could not reach. Hints of other events persist in texts that were declared heretical, rejected as unworthy of inclusion in the canon, such as some apocryphal Gospels or Gnostic writings, discovered, for instance, in Nag Hammadi in 1945. Furthermore, the very land where Jesus walked, ancient Judea, holds untold secrets, carved in stone, sealed in caves, and buried beneath centuries of soil. It is here, in the fields of history, where faith and archaeology converge, that this forbidden question lies hidden. It invisibly hovers in the dim silence of ancient libraries, among dusty scrolls, in the shifting sands of forgotten tombs, in the fissures forming in both ancient empires and the seemingly unshakable foundations of faith. What if Jesus' body was interred in a different manner? Not in that garden tomb, so conveniently located near Golgotha, where, according to Scripture, it was found empty, but somewhere entirely different, in a secret refuge known only to a handful of his most devoted and fearful followers. What if, in the earliest days of Christianity, before authoritative church councils, such as the First Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, and influential Roman emperors like Constantine began actively shaping the canon and deciding which texts would be preserved and which would be irrevocably lost, an entirely different version of events existed. Some courageous scholars, unafraid to tread this treacherous ground, have dared to ask these questions. In their quest, they inevitably stumbled upon a complex labyrinth of speculation, ancient legends, and a deafening silence that, perhaps, holds more information than any spoken words. To delve deeper into this mystery, imagine for a moment that you are standing on the hills beyond Jerusalem as dusk gathers over the ancient city. The sun slowly dips behind Jerusalem's ancient stone walls, painting the sky in crimson hues, and the air fills with the distant, piercing cry of jackals echoing through the desolate valleys. Somewhere nearby, hidden in the encroaching night's shadows, a cave gapes open. Its entrance appears small and unassuming, yet it is imbued with a deep, almost mystical meaning. What could be hidden inside? Only the dust of ages, decaying bones, or absolute emptiness. Or perhaps something that once was, but has long since been taken away, meticulously concealed from prying eyes. And if such a cave truly existed, if it once served as a tomb in which Christ's body rested, who would have borne the burden of keeping it secret? Who would have striven with such relentless determination to erase it from the annals of history, so that no curious researcher could stumble upon a truth capable of shattering the faith of millions worldwide? Modern individuals are left only to speculate. One can only hypothesize based on meager hints and circumstantial evidence. However, it is precisely in this process of conjecture and assumption that an extraordinary journey begins. Before we continue our captivating dive into this mystery, it's important to remember that such investigations require support. If you are interested in these in-depth historical analyses and unsolved mysteries, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. This is incredibly important for its growth and allows us to create new, even more engaging content. Feel free to also comment where you are watching this video from. It helps us feel connected to every viewer. And of course, be sure to watch this video to the end, as the most important conclusions and unexpected discoveries await you in the final part. Links to our other videos on similar mysteries can be found in the description. This journey will lead through the labyrinths of forgotten texts, through the faint whispers of ancient traditions, through majestic ruins and the dust of millennia-old stones. The goal of this exploration is not to unconditionally accept history as it has been transmitted, polished to a sheen, and finalized, but to listen attentively to those whispers that have gone unnoticed. Whispers of a hidden tomb, of a version of events that the official church has never acknowledged. And so, despite centuries of silence, the question remains, soft yet persistent, echoing through time. If the tomb truly was not empty, then where is it now? Could it still be waiting in silence, waiting for someone to discover it? Is it possible that the greatest mystery of the Christian world still lies beneath layers of stone and earth, forgotten yet never truly gone? As we delve deeper into this intriguing narrative, we must constantly remember the forbidden question. It must serve as our guiding lantern in the darkness, illuminating the path through the shadows of history. For this journey has only just begun. To attempt to locate this hypothetical hidden tomb, one must first journey into the heart of ancient Judea, traversing its harsh, sun-baked soil. This is a land where history lies incredibly close to the surface, where every stone seems to hold echoes of past centuries, and where silence often speaks more eloquently than any words. This land, despite its apparent severity, is alive with the unseen whispers of the past. The hills here rise and fall in gentle, muted waves, covered in thickets of ancient olive trees, their roots deeply intertwined in the soil over centuries. The air is dry, imbued with the light, sweet scent of figs, mingled with the sharp, distinctive tang of dust. Through these valleys, shepherds still lead their flocks today, just as they did in the time of King David, thousands of years ago. And the eternal wind, sweeping across these expanses, still carries the soft murmur of prayers rising from the holy city of Jerusalem. Yet beneath this familiar, established rhythm of daily life lies something far older, something deeply hidden from superficial view. For the hills of Judea are literally riddled with caves, thousands upon thousands of limestone tombs carved into the rock. To the casual observer, they may appear to be no more than dark, unremarkable openings in the hillsides, their entrances half hidden by dense shrubs and fallen stones, giving them the appearance of abandoned and forgotten places. Nevertheless, each of these ancient chambers represents a kind of portal to bygone eras, a silent sanctuary where the deceased once found eternal rest. Some of these burial structures are adorned with intricate carvings, on which faded symbols are barely discernible, perhaps images of fish, circles, or stars, almost completely erased by the relentless passage of time. Others remain unnamed and unmarked, their entrances long forgotten, and their interior spaces filled with centuries of dust and fallen debris. According to archaeologists, the number of these tombs defies all conceivable counts, forming a vast and silent necropolis that invisibly stretches beneath the mountainous landscapes. It was within this unique landscape, this sun-scorched and dust-covered land, that Jesus Christ was buried. And it is here, among these ancient witnesses, that the profound mystery of his final abode still lies hidden. The Gospel texts recount the presence of a garden near Golgotha, the place of crucifixion, where, according to the Scriptures, a brand new, untouched tomb, awaiting its first occupant, had been carved into the rock. However, such a detail, described with such precision, strikes some researchers as almost too ideal, even too convenient for the narrative. A legitimate question arises: could such a tomb truly have been located in the immediate vicinity of Golgotha? Or was this part of the story formulated to simplify the narrative, to guide the reader more towards profound spiritual meaning than strict historical fact? For the very soil, the ancient earth itself, seems to hold a different, at times contradictory, chronicle of events. In this region, burial structures were by no means rare. They were literally ubiquitous. Many were deeply carved into limestone by wealthy families and securely sealed with massive stones, intended to eternally enclose the deceased within. While common people found their final resting place in shallow earthen graves, the wealthy preferred to immortalize their legacy by carving monumental tombs directly into the rock faces. Consequently, if Jesus was provided with such a resting place, it certainly would not have matched his social status nor been ordinary. He was a condemned man, executed as a criminal, and his few followers had scattered in panic and fear. Roman customs emphatically did not provide for dignified tombs for such individuals. Their bodies were typically left to decompose or thrown into common graves, thereby depriving them of all dignity and right to remembrance. And yet, it is at this narrative point that the story takes an entirely different turn. Some scholars and theologians persistently argue that Jesus was a figure of an entirely different magnitude, and that a small but devoted circle of his followers, gripped by despair and fear, sought to ensure him a burial devoid of dishonor. They believed that in the deep silence of the evening, the body was moved not to a public place, but to a carefully concealed chamber, lost among the hills. If this hypothesis were true, where then could such a hidden chamber have been located? Perhaps it was one of the countless tombs, picturesquely scattered throughout the valleys surrounding Jerusalem. Or was the location chosen significantly farther from the city walls, in a secluded spot, chosen exclusively for reasons of secrecy rather than convenience? The earth itself, it seems, holds the keys to solving this mystery. And yet, as if by some unspoken vow, it stubbornly refuses to reveal them. Archaeologists have dedicated entire lives to unremitting excavations in these hills. Their shovels struck hard stone with a monotonous thud, and lantern beams pierced the darkness of ancient cavities that had not seen sunlight for millennia. In the course of their investigations, they discovered numerous ossuaries, stone boxes designed to hold bones, on which inscriptions were engraved, sometimes mundane, sometimes strikingly familiar. Among these names were Joseph, Mary, and even Jesus. Every such discovery inevitably gives rise to a multitude of new questions, sparks heated debates, and ultimately plunges researchers into a deep, meaningful silence. For every tomb that finally emerges from oblivion, another, it seems, vanishes without a trace, erased either by circumstance or by deliberate action. And always the earth itself, remaining silent and relentless, keeps its secrets, offering no explanations. Is it possible that one of these countless chambers still securely holds the greatest of all existing mysteries? That among the picturesque olive groves and stone-strewn hills of Judea rests a tomb unlike all others, a tomb that, by design, was intended for a figure destined to change the course of all world history. Walking through Judea, one inadvertently steps at the threshold of this astonishing possibility, feeling the breath of centuries. Every step taken on this land stirs up minute particles of dust that have settled here since time immemorial. Every gaze directed into the distance, at the horizon line, resonates in the soul with the weight of forgotten centuries. And so, this fundamental question continues to hang in the air, especially as the sun slowly sets and long shadows deepen over the ancient hills. Is Jesus' tomb still hidden among these numerous caves and underground refuges? Was it merely overlooked by researchers, mistaken for an ordinary burial chamber, its great secret remaining completely untouched? The earth stubbornly maintains its silence, but even this silence can carry profound meaning and speak volumes. Perhaps the ancient dust itself retains memories of the past, even if humanity has long forgotten them. Among the countless caves and rock-hewn chambers that abound in Judea, the vast majority easily go unnoticed by the uninitiated eye. Small, cramped, and often completely devoid of any ornamentation, these tombs served as resting places for ordinary families for generations. Their interior walls were riddled with niches designed for the careful storage of ancestral bones. However, there are others. These chambers stand out significantly from the rest. Having been carved with such striking precision, or possessing such imposing scale, that they unequivocally indicate their special importance, a reverence extending far beyond ordinary funerary utility. These tombs have their distinctive features. They are hidden not in plain sight, but in locations carefully chosen for both absolute secrecy and their permanence and endurance. Their entrances might have been artificially obscured by natural rock formations or cleverly concealed behind walls erected centuries later. The interior spaces of these structures are larger than usual, sometimes including several additional chambers branching off from the central hall. On the walls of some, faint and enigmatic symbols engraved by unknown hands remain, their true meaning lost to time. Is it possible that Jesus' tomb was precisely such a place? Not the carefully described garden tomb, nor the simple rock-hewn stone mentioned in the Gospels, but rather a place consciously chosen to ensure robust protection and preservation. It would have been a tomb intended not for the casual visitor or curious passerby, but exclusively for the few who possessed knowledge of its existence and who felt a deep fear of its potential discovery. Historical chronicles and ancient records, in turn, contain hints of such possibilities, reinforcing these hypotheses. For example, Roman chronicles contain mentions of secret burials for certain individuals, political prisoners, dissidents, or those whose deaths proved highly inconvenient for maintaining the official public narrative. And while these references are fragmentary, they certainly point to the existence of a culture that deeply understood the powerful force of concealing a body and preserving history untold. Archaeological investigations constantly provide us with fascinating, sometimes tantalizing, clues. Among the many burials discovered in the vicinity of Jerusalem are those that stand out for their unusual richness and complexity of design for that historical period. These tombs, skillfully carved into the limestone, impress with intricate niches and massive stones that were rolled not only for hermetic sealing, but also for the secure protection of the contents. In some, even ossuaries rest, whose inscriptions remarkably echo familiar names: Jesus, Joseph, Mary. Scholars still actively debate whether such coincidences are merely a result of the commonality of these names, or if they hint at something far deeper and more significant. However, the greatest interest lies in those tombs whose histories seem to have been deliberately concealed from prying eyes. These are burials that were sealed with additional layers of stone or brick many centuries ago. These are the tombs from which ossuaries were either prudently removed or destroyed, as if to erase all traces. And finally, these are the places where the earliest visitors left barely discernible, almost imperceptible marks. Crosses, only lightly etched into the stone surface, small fish symbols, or even enigmatic patterns that could well have been part of some secret code. Some historians lean towards the idea that these marks were deliberately placed to guide the initiated, while simultaneously misleading those not privy to the secret. A legitimate question arises: what secret could have demanded such meticulous care, such intricate subtlety, and such robust protection? Could it be that Jesus' tomb was never intended for subsequent discovery? Is it possible that its exact location was known only to a very select few, perhaps even only to those who truly understood the true nature of his legacy? Some scholars believe that Mary Magdalene or the closest disciples might have possessed knowledge of its secret location, carefully preserving it in their memory and passing it down through stories, far from curious eyes and the persistent questions of authorities. Legends passed down by word of mouth for generations, and later deemed apocryphal, contain hints of this. They tell of journeys and searches for refuge far beyond Jerusalem. Some of these tales describe Mary Magdalene traveling across the Mediterranean, carrying sacred knowledge or perhaps even physical relics, crossing seas and continents. Could these traditions preserve the memory of a tomb that no longer exists in Judea, perhaps relocated, carefully hidden, or even duplicated to ensure the safety of its contents? The very idea seems almost impossible to definitively prove, yet it would be wrong to ignore the physical evidence. A tomb that strikingly differed from all others would undoubtedly have attracted universal attention. Its absence in official historical accounts suggests a deliberate omission. Its characteristic features, such as multiple chambers, symbolic carvings, and hidden niches, lead to speculation that it was the resting place of someone outstanding, of exceptional significance. Imagine, in the dim light of early evening, a person entering such a tomb. The air inside is cool and heavy, smelling faintly of limestone and ancient dust. Shadows cling to the corners, and the very walls seem to whisper, as if remembering the hands that once carved them. Stone benches line the walls, and niches that once served as the final resting place for the deceased now wait in complete silence. Faintly engraved symbols on the walls hint at stories perhaps never meant for the world. It is here that one can begin to understand why Jesus' tomb, if it was indeed such a place, might have been erased from collective memory. Ordinary tombs simply fade into oblivion over time. Distinguished burials, however, demand explanations, and those in power, fearing challenges to their authority and established beliefs, might have preferred silence over a potentially explosive revelation. It is a place that defies our usual expectations. It is a space where the earthly and the sacred intersect, where faith and history converge, but leave us without certainty, only with a multitude of questions. And imagining these cool, echoing chambers, we lean towards the possibility that history has hidden its greatest secret here. That Jesus' tomb, unlike any other, was created to withstand not only the test of time, but also the pressures of faith, fear, and deliberate oblivion. Perhaps in the end, this tomb was not merely a resting place for a body, but a repository of a legacy. A secret passed down in whispers and hidden in shadows, waiting for those who might one day discover it. If we truly want to understand the tomb that history has so skillfully concealed, we must first listen to those voices that have been almost completely silenced. Beyond the canonical Gospels, beyond the familiar stories of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, lie texts that were once valued, then rejected, deemed heretical, forbidden, or considered too dangerous for public view. These are the apocryphal Gospels, writings hidden in monastery walls, forgotten in dusty libraries, or buried in desert sands. The Gospel of Peter, the Gospel of Thomas, the Acts of Pilate, each of these works carries faint hints, barely audible whispers of events and truths that were never fully revealed. On their pages, the life, teachings, and even death of Jesus are sometimes presented quite differently, with subtle but intriguing variations that inevitably spark curiosity. Some passages speak not only of resurrection, but also of strictest secrecy, of followers entrusted with sacred knowledge, of places specifically designated for concealing important mysteries. Consider, for example, the Gospel of Philip, a text discovered among the famous Nag Hammadi manuscripts in 1945. In it, the sacred relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene is described in intimate, deeply symbolic terms. Some scholars suggest that a much deeper truth lies within these narratives, testifying to a trust placed in an individual that others could not maintain. Perhaps it even refers to knowledge of the exact location of the final resting place. The question arises, do apocryphal texts hold memories of a tomb intended for eternal concealment? These are stories told for those capable of appreciating the full weight and significance of secrecy. Other ancient writings, reaching us only in fragments, tell of journeys undertaken after the crucifixion. Followers were instructed to quickly leave these places, to guard sacred knowledge, and to protect relics that would otherwise face desecration. And in these instructions, one consistent thought emerges: the exceptional importance of a specific location. The tomb, the resting place, the secret chamber, all cease to be merely a grave. It transforms into a sanctuary, a repository of priceless memory, an invisible link between the earthly world and eternity. However, the apocryphal texts remain deliberately vague. They offer only fleeting glimpses, shadows of events that might have occurred, or might have remained fiction. Names are changed, locations are skillfully disguised, and metaphors are layered upon one another, creating a complex cipher, as if the authors themselves were aware of the mortal danger of full disclosure. They encoded their knowledge in a language that could withstand the test of time, yet actively resisted any intrusion. Could these writings, long rejected by official church authorities, still hold the keys to the secret tomb? Some scholars are convinced of this. They point to repeated mentions of garden tombs, secluded resting places, and special guardians tasked with protecting sacred remains. Certain passages hint that the body was not merely preserved, but carefully hidden from view. Perhaps even moved from its original location to prevent its discovery. Imagine Jesus' early followers, scattered and fearful, clutching tightly to the scraps of knowledge they possessed. They were keenly aware that the political and religious authorities of the time had no desire whatsoever to preserve their memories. For them, the tomb was more than just stone and earth. It was a message, a silent testimony to a story that absolutely could not be allowed to vanish. And yet, over the centuries, the Church systematized and codified doctrine, carefully selecting some texts and ruthlessly discarding others. What seemed dangerous, too human, overly dubious, or excessively revealing was securely hidden. Many apocryphal writings were committed to fire or locked away in secret vaults. The whispers of a hidden tomb survived only in fragments, in faint hints that an inquisitive mind can still trace, if diligent enough. Some scholars argue that the suppression of these texts was not solely a matter of theological correctness. It was also a matter of controlling history. By controlling which stories could be told, authorities shaped collective memory, influenced faith, and guided the piety of the flock. Apocryphal texts, by preserving alternative narratives, subtly hint at truths that could challenge the official account, including, perhaps, the true resting place of Jesus. As we delve into these forbidden writings, a certain picture gradually emerges. A body placed in a tomb, a hidden or securely protected chamber, followers entrusted with sacred knowledge, and a secrecy spanning many generations. These texts speak in riddles, but in their mysterious messages, they leave traces, like breadcrumbs, for those willing to follow them. And so we come to a quiet, yet profound realization. If a hidden tomb truly exists, it is not simply a matter of geographical location. It is a matter of memory, of profound secrecy, of coded messages passed from hand to hand. It is a tomb that exists in the minds of people as truly as it does in stone, a resting place whose location is protected not only by earth and stone, but by tradition, fear, and piety. Could the apocryphal texts be whispering to us even now? Could they be testifying that the story of Jesus' burial is incomplete, that something vital was removed from the canonical account, leaving an empty space that only imagination and diligent research can fill? And if this is true, then the tomb, wherever it may be, is more than a simple grave. It is a repository of memory, a guardian of secrets, a place where history and mystery merge. It waits quietly for the world to finally pay attention to what has been hidden for so long. Perhaps no image is as familiar, as universally recognizable, as that of the empty tomb, the rolled-away stone, the discarded linen cloths, the empty chamber. This image has been replicated in churches, paintings, and stories for centuries. For believers, it is a cornerstone of faith, a miracle symbolizing triumph over death. However, for the historian, for the seeker of hidden truths, this very emptiness becomes a question, a riddle, a whisper, a possibility that history may not be quite as it seems. The Gospels consistently assert that the tomb was found empty on the third day. Angels spoke, the stone was rolled away, and the disciples were left in awe. But the details vary from account to account. Who first visited the tomb, what exactly they saw, how the body disappeared. The discrepancies are subtle, but they linger, like shadows in the corners of memory. Some scholars suggest that the empty tomb is not necessarily irrefutable proof of resurrection, but rather evidence of concealment. Is it not possible that Jesus' remains were removed before they were discovered, perhaps relocated by loyal adherents or by hidden custodians? Is it possible that the tomb itself was not initially empty, but that what is widely known today is a skillfully constructed narrative designed to shape and strengthen religious conviction and piety? Let's consider the pragmatic aspects. Roman authorities executed a man they considered a criminal, and therefore had no reason to honor him with a dignified burial. However, his followers, driven by deep despair and fear, could well have taken extraordinary measures to protect his remains from desecration and oblivion. Thus, they might have moved him to a more secure refuge, a hidden burial place that would protect him from desecration or careful scrutiny by adversaries. Nevertheless, in subsequent centuries, the empty tomb transformed not merely into a narrative, but into a powerful symbol and an unshakable cornerstone of faith. The question of the body's true resting place receded in importance compared to the overarching narrative of resurrection. The visible and commonly known lost its primary significance compared to what could inspire and strengthen faith. But what if somewhere there existed a tomb, a sepulchre, unparalleled, that was never included in the canonical narrative? What if this empty tomb was merely an obvious symbolic expression of a far more incomprehensible, deeper mystery. Imagine a tomb that guarded more than just mortal remains. A tomb that preserved a priceless legacy, an ancient bloodline, or sacred knowledge, perhaps entrusted to the most faithful followers. Ancient manuscripts, both canonical and apocryphal, contain intriguing hints of this possibility. Some of these writings speak of remains under vigilant guard, of followers keeping watch, and of hidden chambers intended to preserve the memory of the deceased. Other texts, deliberately vague and ambiguous in their phrasing, suggest that what the disciples saw may not have been the complete and exhaustive truth. Could the story of the resurrection itself have been layered over the genuine reality of a burial that, for certain reasons, was intended to be kept in the strictest secrecy? Archaeology, in turn, also raises a number of questions and perplexities. Burials in the vicinity of Jerusalem have been discovered with characteristic inscriptions, indicating possible family ties. Some contain strikingly familiar names, yet never acknowledged or accepted by the mainstream scientific community. Ossuaries, hidden chambers, and hermetically sealed caves unequivocally hint at a burial culture far more complex than commonly believed. And in this labyrinth of stone and dust, veiled by history, fear, and piety, could Jesus' tomb also have been located? The mystery deepens when we consider the human factor. Those who possessed knowledge, who were direct witnesses to the crucifixion and subsequent burial, faced severe threats from both political and religious authorities. Any information concerning the tomb, concerning the resting place, would pose a mortal danger to these individuals. Silence became the guarantee of survival, and secrecy the only form of protection in such turbulent times. Is it not possible that the empty tomb we know is not the whole story, but merely a version carefully shaped to preserve both religious faith and the personal safety of the followers? Traditions of subsequent centuries suggest that the tomb, or perhaps even several tombs, moved with the faithful, transported across various regions and carefully concealed from those who might desecrate or destroy it for their own nefarious purposes. Some sources even whisper that fragments of Jesus' remains were hidden in places significantly distant from Jerusalem, preserved by secret societies who understood their true value not in material wealth, but in the preservation of memory and sacred heritage. Thus, the emptiness of the sepulchre transforms into an unresolved question rather than a final conclusion. It is an open space that encourages deep contemplation, stirs the imagination, and calls for new investigations. It is a space where history, faith, and secrecy are inextricably intertwined, leaving us with an astonishing paradox. A tomb that may indeed have existed, but remains invisible to historical analysis. A story that is widely known, but quite possibly incomplete. An emptiness that may hold far more than it reveals on the surface. Is the sepulchre perceived as a symbol of resurrection, simultaneously a symbol of concealment? That its emptiness was not merely a miraculous event, but a painstakingly maintained secret, a pointer guiding towards a truth long forgotten by the world, yet carefully preserved by those who dared to remember and transmit it. As we delve into reflections on this enigma, the crypt ceases to be merely a pile of stones and shreds of linen. It transforms into a door, a threshold to questions stretching across centuries, to a history that, quite possibly, will never be fully told. And yet, in the silence of the night, in the imagination awakened by the whispers of numerous possibilities, the presence of this hidden sepulchre is almost palpable, silently awaiting its hour beneath layers of dust, stone, and shadow. The empty crypt, therefore, appears as both revelation and concealment, serving as a reminder that history is never straightforward and unambiguous, and that even the most familiar narratives can harbor depths that humanity is only beginning to comprehend. To further understand the likelihood of a hidden tomb, we must turn to those who governed this land in those times, to those whose unquestionable power shaped destinies and determined life and death in Judea, namely, the Romans. Their records are extremely sparse and fragmented, often omitting details that might be of greatest interest to a modern researcher. However, even through the veil of bureaucratic procedures and dry military reports, faint echoes emerge, hints of unusual burials, of the fates of prisoners, of measures taken to prevent public unrest, and perhaps even a barely discernible whisper of a body found not where it was expected. Roman historians, as well as official administrative documents of that era, often mention executions in unemotional, purely procedural terms. They meticulously record methods of execution, including crucifixion, other forms of punishment, and the subsequent disposal of remains, almost never paying attention to such a concept as a dignified burial for the condemned. However, against this backdrop, a number of very remarkable and atypical mentions stand out. Thus, authoritative chroniclers such as Tacitus, Josephus, and others contain unambiguous hints of measures taken to thwart attempts by supporters to retrieve remains, mention the presence of guards at burial sites, and express fears that claims of resurrection could provoke mass unrest and rebellion. The question arises, could these measures have inadvertently contributed to the preservation of a certain secret? A burial that, while under strict supervision, was at the same time protected in plain sight. The Romans were exceptionally meticulous in recording events and maintaining documentation, but their approach always remained deeply pragmatic. Their unwavering goal was to suppress any manifestation of dissent, so that political prisoners could not become symbols and inspirers of potential uprisings. For them, a tomb represented more than just a final resting place. It could harbor a direct threat, becoming a potential gathering place for followers who might misinterpret its meaning or use it for their own purposes. A number of scholars hypothesize that Roman authorities, anticipating a surge of fanaticism around the figure of Jesus, might have sanctioned the relocation or even concealment of the burial site, provided such actions did not provoke new unrest. Perhaps the notion of an empty tomb could have been partly an artificially created necessity, designed to calm public opinion, while the true burial place remained secret, either through the efforts of the disciples themselves or with the help of cautious and trusted guardians. Even the sparse administrative records, despite their brevity, contain intriguing hints and give rise to many conjectures. Josephus, in his works, mentions bodies placed in tombs, as well as the authorities' concern about potential public reaction. Tacitus, for his part, records the presence of guards and meticulous precautionary measures taken concerning those considered particularly dangerous. These seemingly insignificant details, when viewed through the prism of secrecy and the struggle for survival, suggest that something more than just one well-known tomb was at stake. However, the Romans themselves left behind only meager hints. Their meticulous yet selective reports contain no mention of the names of secondary burial sites, of possible relocations of bodies by followers, or of the existence of any secret chambers. Ultimately, only faint traces, weak echoes of fear, a barely discernible shadow of unease have reached us. The assumption that someone, perhaps, was guarding a secret, even while the powerful empire strove with all its might to establish and maintain order. Imagine such a scene. Roman legionaries, frozen at the entrance to a tomb, full of apprehension about possible theft, suspiciously eyeing casual onlookers, and in anxious uncertainty, wondering if the silent knight held hidden devoted followers, ready to do anything to preserve something priceless. Thus, the tomb itself transforms into a kind of stage where the threads of history, the veils of secrecy, and the depth of piety intertwine. Every stone in its foundation, every seal at its entrance, every vigilant guard becomes an inseparable part of a narrative that is never fully told, yet never remains absolutely hidden. Some theorists suggest that the mentioned precautionary measures were driven not only by a desire to prevent theft, but also by a wish to control historical memory. The Romans were well aware of the immense power of narrative and its influence on minds, even if they did not fully grasp its profound spiritual implications. A tomb capable of attracting excessive attention could become a source of inspiration for rebellions or fertile ground for the birth of new myths. Thus, by guarding this place, they might have inadvertently preserved a secret, protecting it from prying eyes, even as they strove with all their might to suppress what it symbolized. Even more captivating is the possibility that the Roman authorities themselves might not have been fully aware of all the events that transpired. If we assume that a group of devoted followers managed to move the body, hiding it in a chamber not reflected in official annals, then imperial records might show no more than formal adherence to procedures. And yet, even in these dry, emphatically bureaucratic records, faint echoes of something extraordinary persist: fear of potential unrest, an implicit understanding of the depth of piety, and a silent acknowledgement that some secrets are too fragile to be left to chance. It is in these omissions and fragmented pieces of information that the human imagination gains complete freedom. Is it possible that the tomb, if it indeed existed, could have been guarded by soldiers who never truly comprehended the full scope of what was happening? Could it have been hidden in plain sight, a secret preserved by both human foresight and an astonishing divine coincidence? Could the keepers of history, whether Roman officials or devoted followers, have unknowingly preserved a secret that still rests beneath the ancient hills of Judea today? Thus, the echoes emanating from ancient Roman records serve a far more significant function than merely listing events. They open up a multitude of potential possibilities and scenarios. They subtly hint at an oversight, at a deeply rooted fear, and at unceasing vigilance. They leave behind a disquieting, unsettling thought that what was buried was not merely a physical body, but an entire story, a sacred secret, a great legacy that the world, perhaps, was not yet ready to accept. The faint whispers of these ancient narratives reach us across 2 millennia, inviting us to wonder, to imagine, and to believe that somewhere beneath the ancient stones of Judea, in hidden chambers guarded by soldiers whose names have long since vanished into oblivion, a secret continues to await its hour, patient, silent, and utterly untouched. In the meticulous precision of the Roman administrative machine, in the strict bureaucratic records designed to ensure complete control over all aspects of life, we unexpectedly discover the paradox of secrecy. For even while under observation, even while carefully guarded, truth can remain hidden, waiting for those attentive enough to listen to its faint echoes. Other mysteries whisper not through stone and dust, not through ancient artifacts, but through a fragile thread of blood, passed down from generation to generation in the deepest silence. Among the many persistent and highly debated rumors that stir the minds of scholars and believers, a hypothesis stands out: that Jesus of Nazareth may have left behind not only profound spiritual teachings, but also a hidden bloodline. This lineage of descendants, it is suggested, was deliberately concealed from historical record and consciously suppressed by those who understood the potential danger and far-reaching consequences of its revelation for the established world order and religious doctrine. Delving into this intriguing possibility means a journey into twilight zones, where the boundaries between documented history, deeply entrenched faith, and bold speculation become blurred, forming a complex and inseparable knot. The generally accepted canonical texts, which form the basis of Christian doctrine, make no mention whatsoever of any blood descendants of Jesus. They consistently emphasize his spiritual, rather than his physical or carnal, legacy. Nevertheless, in numerous apocryphal writings that were not included in the official biblical canon, as well as in later folk legends, subtle but intriguing indications are found that his relationships, especially with Mary Magdalene, may have been of a significantly deeper and more intimate nature. It is suggested that the revelation of the true nature of these relationships could not only shake, but completely shatter the established millennia-old foundations of ecclesiastical power and dogma, presenting an entirely different picture of his earthly life. Early adherents of the new teaching, operating under constant threat and inevitable persecution, were likely exceptionally secretive and prudent. They, quite possibly, clearly understood the potential threat that the open existence of such a bloodline could pose. Whether a real child, a direct blood heir, or even a symbolic continuity of his teachings embodied in a specific line of knowledge keepers, such a legacy could under no circumstances be left without robust protection. In the ancient world, where harsh Roman law and pervasive religious oversight reigned supreme, such a legacy would inevitably require meticulous and comprehensive protection. It would have to be quietly and carefully passed down from generation to generation, from hand to hand, remaining securely hidden from the watchful eyes of those who might seek to destroy it or exploit it for their own ends. Some scholars and thinkers hypothesize that the Church, upon achieving significant power and influence, immediately set about consolidating its dominance over the burgeoning religious narrative. By systematizing and codifying Scripture, consciously excluding some texts and deliberately suppressing others, it could guarantee the dominance of only one strictly defined story. This version left absolutely no room for speculation about Jesus having earthly heirs or any secret bloodlines. Any, even the slightest indication of the existence of such a lineage would undoubtedly have been regarded as an extremely dangerous threat to the emerging orthodoxy and as a direct challenge to centuries of spiritual authority based on celibacy and divinity. It is in the apocryphal Gospels that shadows hinting at such a possibility are again found, offering alternative perspectives. These texts emphasize the unusually close connection between Jesus and Mary Magdalene, detailing secret teachings that were entrusted specifically to her. They also tell of mysterious journeys during which certain knowledge and perhaps something far more tangible, some material object or even a person, were moved to a safe refuge. A legitimate question arises. Could these ancient tales truly conceal a mention of a physical legacy, of a child or an entire line of descendants who were securely protected from a hostile world and its curious eyes? Later legends and numerous assertions arising over the centuries only intensify this intriguing whisper. There are stories that tell of ancient families living in southern France, particularly in regions near the enigmatic Rennes-le-Château, or in remote Mediterranean towns. These traditions hint that a sacred bloodline was transported and securely hidden far from its original place of origin, Judea. Notably, some of these narratives are closely linked to legends of the Knights Templar, who are credited with discovering certain ancient relics and mysterious records, directly or indirectly testifying to the existence of a hidden legacy. Despite the fragmentary nature of all available evidence and the ongoing fierce scientific and theological debates, the sheer recurrence of these motifs and plots, traceable across centuries and various geographical regions, is truly astonishing. The attempt to trace this presumed suppressed bloodline inevitably leads to an encounter with both the boundless human imagination and an intriguing, albeit hypothetical, possibility. Such research requires not only a meticulous study of surviving written documents, but also the identification of hidden patterns, unobvious interconnections, and symbols that could potentially indicate a continuous succession. A continuity that, it seems, has been skillfully and meticulously concealed for many centuries. Ancient symbols engraved on tomb walls, cunningly coded messages encrypted in old manuscripts, and the unusual or specific placement of sacred relics in ancient churches. All these elements could have served as unspoken pointers for the few initiates who deeply understood the true cost and immense stakes involved in preserving this secret. Imagine a hidden chamber, a kind of tomb within a tomb, where the presumed bloodline could have been quietly guarded. Not glorified or openly proclaimed to the world, but carefully and vigilantly protected from prying eyes and hostile forces. Perhaps a descendant grew up far from sacred Jerusalem, completely unaware of their true origin, yet unconsciously carrying an unbreakable, albeit unrecognized connection to the man whose life profoundly changed the course of human history. And likely, only a very narrow circle of guardians over the centuries possessed this sacred truth, carefully transmitting it in whispers from one generation to the next. This concept is certainly thrilling, as it directly challenges our established notions of both history and the very essence of faith. It encourages us to imagine a world in which the sacred is not limited to the spiritual realm alone, but is inextricably, biologically intertwined with flesh and blood. Moreover, it implies that the history we know, a narrative of faith, resurrection, and piety, may conceal an additional hidden narrative that has been carefully guarded and deliberately forgotten. And yet, despite all attempts at suppression, this intriguing whisper does not fade, permeating centuries, cultures, and ancient texts. The possibility of such a bloodline still exists. It is never spoken aloud, never explicitly recorded in official documents. Yet it cannot be completely eradicated or destroyed from collective memory and speculation. In every hidden tomb, in every surviving fragment of apocryphal writing, in every legend of mysterious journeys, there lies a subtle hint, an elusive glimpse of something that was deliberately and meticulously concealed. Is it possible that the tomb itself, skillfully disguised among the rugged hills and numerous caves of Judea, was an integral element of this complex system of protection? That the body, its teachings, and perhaps even irrefutable evidence of a bloodline were carefully preserved together, protected from official history and hidden from any external investigation or analysis? Was the concealment of this presumed bloodline as critically important to early religious hierarchies as the very maintenance and spread of the new faith? If this assumption is correct, then the hidden tomb represents something far greater than a mere final resting place. It becomes a kind of repository of memory, a silent guardian of the deepest secrets, a place where immutable history and unfathomable mystery intersect, merging into one. It quietly and patiently awaits the moment when the world finally discovers what has been securely hidden for so long. As we begin to ponder these assumptions, it becomes clear that the mystery of Jesus' tomb is inextricably linked to the enigma of what might have happened after his earthly life, to the mystery of what, perhaps, was carried through time in complete silence, guarded from the entire world, yet carefully preserved for countless centuries. Thus, this persistent whisper of a suppressed bloodline not only urges us to imagine a hidden chamber, but also invites us to consider the existence of an entire hidden legacy. A legacy that patiently awaits those who possess enough patience to heed its call and the determination to follow its barely discernible, elusive echoes. If a hidden tomb exists, if a suppressed bloodline can be traced, then in the shadows of history, one figure inevitably emerges: Mary Magdalene. In public consciousness, her image is often reduced to that of a repentant sinner, a simple companion of Jesus, whose biography has been carefully sanitized and simplified. However, non-canonical writings, the faint whispers of ancient traditions, and fragments of early Christian lore point to a significantly more complex, far deeper, and more significant picture. Magdalene's presence at the foot of the cross, her unwavering devotion, and her role as the first witness to the resurrection remain undisputed within canonical scripture. But in texts rejected by the official church, her significance expands substantially. She is entrusted with sacred knowledge, charged with its preservation, and appears as a bearer of sacred mysteries. Mysteries that, according to some researchers, might have included information about Jesus' true final resting place. One can, for example, turn to the Gospel of Philip, where she is referred to as Jesus' companion. This phrasing is deliberate, deeply personal, and almost provocative in its ambiguity. Some interpret this as an indication of an exceptional spiritual intimacy. Others tend to suggest that it hints at a tangible connection that could have included offspring, a continuation of the lineage, or possession of information about a burial place that remained unknown to the wider public. Throughout Europe, traditions are passed down by word of mouth, telling of her travels after the tragic events of the crucifixion. Some stories claim she found refuge in the southern regions of Gaul, carefully preserving relics and priceless memories of the man she so devotedly followed. Other versions suggest that she traveled across the Mediterranean, ensuring that sacred knowledge and, perhaps, a physical legacy remained securely hidden from the eyes of authorities who might seek to destroy them. In these narratives, Mary Magdalene becomes both guardian and messenger, a kind of invisible figure whose existence serves as a link between the tomb and distant corners of the world. Her unseen influence extends through centuries, touching organizations like the Templars, the Cathars, and numerous secret fraternities who, according to rumors, were engaged in protecting ancient relics and manuscripts. Some medieval chronicles contain hints that these groups revered Mary Magdalene not only for her profound spiritual significance, but also for her involvement in a truth that was deliberately excluded from the official historical narrative. Could she have been the guardian of the tomb, the protector of the bloodline, the silent witness to a secret capable of shaking the foundations of entire empires? Archaeological findings and ancient traditions intersect in a remarkable way. Sites in the southern regions of France, such as Rennes-le-Château, are firmly associated with unsolved treasures, mysterious parchments, and unusual symbols. While the scientific community actively debates their authenticity, the persistence of these legends suggests the existence of a memory far older than the settlements themselves, a historical shadow that crossed the Mediterranean with those fleeing persecution. Mary Magdalene is invariably present in these accounts. She appears as a figure acting silently, purposefully, guarding something unimaginably precious. One can imagine her walking in the twilight, under the cover of night, carrying something others dared not touch. One can imagine her in the hills of Judea, standing at the entrance to the tomb where her teacher's body was secretly wrapped and laid. She carried knowledge of a bloodline or a relic, entrusted to her alone, aware that chronicles might never immortalize her courage. This unseen shadow represents more than just a romantic tale. It is an embodiment of secrecy, reverence, and the incredible efforts people undertake to preserve what they hold sacred. The image of Magdalene is inextricably linked to the very mystery of the tomb, hinting that even if stones and dust are silent, human memory and deliberate actions played a key role in preserving the past. Her story inevitably raises a difficult question. What truths were lost simply because their bearers chose to remain in the shadows? What evidence of a hidden tomb, a guarded bloodline, sacred knowledge, might have traveled with her through space and time, awaiting its rediscovery? Tracing her invisible trail through ancient traditions and non-canonical testimonies, a distinct picture begins to emerge. The tomb appears not merely as a place of stone and earth. It is also a repository of memory, trust, and the strictest secrecy. Its true existence is equally defined by the actions of those who guarded it, and by the material sepulchre itself. Mary Magdalene's invisible presence serves as a reminder that history is not always reflected in official documents or monumental inscriptions. At times, it is carefully preserved in every step, in barely audible teachings, in the meticulous concealment of knowledge for which the world was not yet ready. Her appearance at the intersection of historical reality and legend hints that the hidden tomb, the concealed genealogy, and all the mysteries of bygone eras may be inextricably linked through the few who dared to preserve memory, while others sought to consign it to oblivion. Thus, in the silent contemplation of the night, one can only imagine her unceasing vigilance, her extraordinary courage, and the great secret she carried. In doing so, it becomes clear that the mystery of Jesus' tomb is inextricably linked to the unseen presence of Mary Magdalene, protector, witness, and keeper of truths that the world may never fully accept. While Jesus' first adherents diligently sought to preserve his memory, another force simultaneously gained momentum: the burgeoning authority of the Christian Church. In its initial periods, The Church was extremely vulnerable, subject to internal disagreements, external persecutions, and doctrinal uncertainty. Its leaders recognized that any story, once fragmented or disputed, could undermine the very foundation of faith. Consequently, the tomb, the teachings, and all hidden legacies became objects of meticulous control, sources of apprehension, and reasons for unceasing vigilance. The fears of the church hierarchy were not abstract or speculative. On the contrary, they were quite concrete. Grand councils were convened to address fundamental questions, which of the numerous Gospels would be elevated to sacred scripture, which texts would be deemed dangerous and forbidden, and which carefully selected memories would shape the world view and spiritual development of believers. During these intense theological debates and heated arguments, entire narratives concerning early Christian history were ruthlessly rejected. Some underwent substantial revision and correction, and others were completely suppressed and consigned to oblivion. Information about secluded burial sites, about possible genealogical lines differing from the accepted ones, and about hidden relics posed a colossal threat. They called into question not only the cornerstone of Christian doctrine, the story of the resurrection, but also the fundamental foundations of the power hierarchy that the Church had so meticulously constructed. One can imagine bishops gathered in dimly lit halls, carefully examining ancient manuscripts, aware that a single unexpected revelation could undermine the authority and integrity of centuries of theological teaching, collapsing the entire carefully built edifice of faith. A randomly found ossuary in a remote cave, an ancient parchment containing hints of a different genealogical line, or faint traditions about Mary Magdalene, keeper of sacred knowledge. Any such evidence threatened to undermine the foundations of faith, sow confusion and division. It was for this reason that fear became the driving force behind decisions, determining which historical memories would be carefully preserved for posterity and which would be irrevocably erased from collective memory. The Church's fears also extended to material, physical spaces. Tombs, ossuaries, and relics that could conflict with the officially sanctioned narrative were carefully hidden, moved to remote locations, or permanently sealed. The majestic walls of cathedrals, hidden crypts beneath ancient monasteries, and even secret chambers in the heart of Rome transformed into repositories for the total control of historical memory. Everything that believers were allowed to see and were taught was subject to the strictest selection and censorship, thereby condemning the rest of the world to ignorance regarding what was hidden beneath layers of stone and earth, remaining inaccessible to the general public. This fear was not limited solely to the desire for power retention. It was inextricably intertwined with the process of creating a historical narrative, with ensuring that faith maintained its internal logic, its persuasiveness for minds and hearts, and remained unshakable and undeniable in the eyes of the flock. Any hidden tomb containing evidence of an alternative bloodline or information entrusted to Mary Magdalene could sow destructive doubts in the hearts and minds of believers, undermining their convictions. For ecclesiastical authority, doubt represented a direct path to rebellion, the spread of heresy, or even worse, the complete collapse of the very foundation of faith. It was for this reason that all potentially dangerous information was met with strict silence. The suppression and concealment of information transformed into a reliable defense of the existing order, and fear itself into an unceasing guardian of the most sacred secrets. As centuries passed, traditions about hidden tombs and unusual bloodlines continued to exist, but always remained on the fringes of official history, in its shadow, on the periphery of public consciousness. They were whispered within secluded monastery walls, found their embodiment in enigmatic, esoteric texts, or were carefully preserved by secret societies whose members deeply understood their true significance and potential power. Such whispers were permitted only in complete obscurity. They were never allowed to surface where they might disrupt common piety or undermine the authority of ecclesiastical power. And yet, paradoxically, fear itself can also act as a guardian. In its attempts to erase certain undesirable truths, the Church, unknowingly, may have ensured their survival in encrypted and hidden forms, awaiting their moment and those capable of deciphering and comprehending them. Tightly sealed tombs, strictly forbidden texts, carefully hidden bloodlines, all these measures, dictated by deep fear, paradoxically preserved the mysteries that might otherwise have been irrevocably lost to humanity. One should look more closely at the symbolic meaning of the sealed tomb. It is not merely an ordinary resting place. It is also a silent warning, an impregnable barrier, and a clear assertion of absolute control. For true believers, it symbolizes the sanctity and inviolability of divine mystery. For those inclined to curiosity and an inquisitive mind, it immediately raises questions. What exactly is so diligently guarded behind these seals? What truths are hidden beneath layers of stone and centuries of dust, truths that humanity, perhaps, is not yet ready to accept and fully comprehend? And at this intersection of overwhelming fear and the strictest secrecy, the hidden tomb acquires a dual meaning, becoming both a literal and a metaphorical space. It represents a place of rest, deep concealment, and unexpressed but palpable power. Its very existence silently challenges the established narrative, reminding humanity that the stories that reach us are often shaped by forces extending far beyond the mere physical existence of the stones from which these tombs are built. The Church's fears also extended to those who would dare to search for this tomb, displaying, from the hierarchy's perspective, an unhealthy curiosity. The system of pilgrimages was strictly regulated. Access to certain places was significantly restricted, and the dissemination of knowledge was rigorously controlled. Anyone who dared to claim knowledge of hidden chambers or alternative bloodlines risked being condemned or, even worse, facing far more severe consequences. Thus, history itself became a powerful weapon of silence, a tool for suppressing inconvenient facts and testimonies. And yet, despite all efforts, fear proved powerless to completely erase even the faint whisper of truth lurking in the shadows. Some fragments of this knowledge did survive. These were hidden manuscripts, legends passed down by word of mouth in whispers, and symbols subtly carved into the walls of ancient tombs and monastic abodes. Such remnants suggest that while fear sought to suppress any revelation, it was unable to completely destroy the very memory of them. Thus, we are faced with an astonishing paradox. The very institutions that so zealously sought to control the historical narrative may have inadvertently ensured its survival, albeit in deeply hidden forms. It was the fear of the ecclesiastical hierarchy that preserved the secrecy of the tomb, the mystery of the bloodline's concealment, and the knowledge entrusted to Mary Magdalene, even as the Church actively strove to maintain and strengthen the faith of millions of its adherents. Today, reflecting on this profound tension between the instinct of fear and the drive for preservation, between authoritative power and persistent secrecy, we begin to more deeply understand why Jesus' tomb could have remained hidden for so many centuries. It is concealed not only by the physical mass of stone and layers of earth, but also by centuries of unceasing vigilance, by a guard born of the deepest fear, and by the enduring power of influence of those who fully understood the colossal stakes of any possible revelation. The hidden tomb exists as much in collective memory, in the sense of fear and in imposed silence, as it does in literal physical stone. And in this quiet, almost invisible preservation, the mystery patiently waits, remaining untouched, inviting us to listen carefully to what history has carefully and silently preserved beneath layers of fear and outward piety. If the fears of the church hierarchy shape the story of the hidden tomb, then the astonishing silence of Nazareth itself adds another, additional layer to this multifaceted mystery. The town where Jesus spent his youth is striking in its extraordinary silence in historical records. Its streets and dwellings are largely absent from contemporary historical testimonies and reports. What is striking is not what was recorded in writing, but rather what remained unrecorded, unsaid. Nazareth, so crucial to the formation of the man who would later inspire a world religion, offers only faint whispers, fleeting shadows, and the weakest, almost ephemeral traces of historical memory. Archaeologists conducting excavations in Nazareth have uncovered unpretentious dwellings, small stone structures, and much evidence of a simple agricultural life. Nevertheless, written sources from that period are very few, and the chronicle of this settlement is largely reconstructed from layered oral traditions and fragmented material finds. Notably, there are no mentions of a family tomb, no detailed description of burial rituals specific to Jesus' lineage, and not a single document has survived that directly links this town to the events that unfolded after the crucifixion. Some historians suggest that such an absence of information might be deliberate. A settlement that could potentially contain key information about Jesus' early years, his relatives, or even the genesis of a secret genealogical line, remains surprisingly overlooked. The question arises, was information about his final resting place, or the preservation of his spiritual legacy, never meant to remain in Nazareth, but was relocated to another site? This absence of documentary evidence transforms into a kind of shield, becoming a hidden veil of secrecy that paradoxically went unnoticed by everyone. Ancient traditions contain hints of movements from Nazareth to other regions, perhaps within Galilee or even beyond the borders of Judea. Mary Magdalene, Joseph of Arimathea, and other devoted followers could likely have transported sacred knowledge or even physical relics from the city, thereby ensuring that their history could not be easily traced or desecrated. The very silence of Nazareth transforms into a kind of clue, suggesting that the birthplace was never intended to be a place for secure concealment. One should pay attention to the landscape stretching around this ancient settlement. Hilly ridges, secluded valleys, and rugged rocky caves could easily have served as a refuge for some secret. However, these areas were very sparsely populated, rarely explored, and largely ignored by Roman authorities. It is quite possible that the initial concealment of sacred relics or knowledge began precisely here, in deep secrecy, before they were moved to more secure or remote corners of the world. This silence becomes even more significant when considering the absence of early mentions in written sources. Numerous early Gospels, apostolic epistles, and other ancient documents contain no information about Nazareth's role in the period following the crucifixion. Although this settlement is identified as the place where Jesus spent his childhood, there is very little evidence of where his followers first gathered, where they kept sacred relics, or how they dealt with the threat of Roman oversight. These lacunae in the historical record are quite significant, forcing researchers to rely on assumptions, oral traditions, and fragmented excerpts from apocryphal writings. Could this silence have been deliberate, a kind of protective erasure of traces? By allowing Nazareth to remain unnoticed, by letting it dissolve into the flow of ordinary history, the guardians of this secret may have ensured that no unwanted attention disturbed the tomb, the genealogical line, or the sacred artifacts. Thus, the very absence of information transforms into a reliable shield, hiding the truth under the cover of everyday, unremarkable rhythms of life. Ancient traditions whisper that the earliest guardians of this legacy might have remained in these hills, silently preserving knowledge and passing important messages from one trusted person to another. The silence of Nazareth is not merely an emptiness or an absence. It is a deliberate pause, a kind of protective quietness that conceals as much as it reveals. It is at this point that a certain pattern begins to emerge. The tomb could have been hidden in plain sight, the genealogical line carefully preserved in secret, and the truth itself transported across many lands precisely because small settlements, like Nazareth, provided complete anonymity. The ordinary, the overlooked, and the unremarkable transforms into an effective tool of concealment, allowing extraordinary mysteries to persist for centuries. As evening twilight descends upon the ancient hilly landscapes, one can imagine the silent streets of Nazareth, deserted save for the soft rustle of olive leaves and the distant bleating of sheep. Somewhere in this profound silence lies a faint echo of footsteps, a whisper of memories, an invisible protective veil shrouding truths that the world, perhaps, was not yet ready to perceive. The silence of Nazareth teaches us a lesson. Mystery often remains untouched where no one looks. It serves as a reminder that history speaks not only of recorded events, but equally of what has been deliberately omitted, and that sometimes the most silent corners of the world hold the most significant and resounding secrets. Thus, a question remains before us, as delicate as it is persistent. What truths were hidden in the silence of Nazareth? And what echoes of past times await their rediscovery in the interwoven shadows of memory and ancient stones? Even in the depths of hidden sepulchres and long-forgotten chambers, one of history's most reliable witnesses is the silent language of symbols. These marks, skillfully carved in stone, etched on ossuaries, or cleverly hidden in plain sight, offer subtle hints, deliberate, mysterious, and often completely unnoticed, at secrets destined to endure beyond the influence of time and power structures. In the limestone tombs located in the vicinity of Jerusalem, archaeologists have discovered ornaments that, at first glance, appear quite mundane. These were geometric shapes, circles, and lines. However, upon closer examination, some of these marks appear deliberate, almost encrypted messages. The fish symbol, a recurring motif in early Christian iconography, can indicate adherence of a particular faith. Stars, spiral patterns, and crosses, in turn, subtly hint at cosmic or divine significance. Some inscriptions are combinations of letters and symbols that remain undeciphered, perhaps by deliberate design, to conceal their true meaning from those not initiated into the mysteries. Could these ancient carvings serve not merely as decorations, but as crucial pointers leading to a long-forgotten tomb, to a carefully hidden bloodline, or to sacred relics whose existence remained secret? Some researchers hypothesize that symbols found in certain burial sites may reveal not only connections between influential families, but also hint at secret knowledge passed down through generations, or indicate places that were specifically protected from prying eyes. A series of crosses, artfully arranged niches, or complex geometric alignments could signal not only the religious faith of their creators, but also the deliberate concealment of something extremely important. In these silent messages, etched in stone, ordinary rock transforms into a detailed map, and the inquisitive observer becomes a true detective, piecing together a complex puzzle step by step, created with a single purpose: to survive centuries of oblivion and deliberate suppression of information. Consider the ossuaries, small stone boxes designed to hold bones, found in tombs of that historical period. Some bear inscriptions, and while these are most often common names, occasionally names closely associated with Jesus or his immediate family appear. On these artifacts, names like Yeshua, Miriam, or Joseph can be seen. And while it is acknowledged that these names were quite common in that era, it is their specific arrangement, unique combinations, and accompanying symbols that spark genuine interest and numerous questions. Could they have been markers designating a tomb specially set apart from others, distinguished by its particular status? Perhaps it was a place of immense significance, cleverly hidden in plain sight. Symbolism is also reflected in the architectural design of ancient structures: rolled stones, carefully disguised chambers, and numerous, sometimes intricate, entrances. These are not merely structural solutions dictated by engineering necessity. These elements could have served as complex protective measures, intended either to guide or to deliberately mislead those attempting to find the entrance. Some tombs appear quite ordinary externally, but inside conceal several hidden chambers, perhaps guarding a body, a valuable relic, or even evidence of a bloodline that was decreed to be kept in the strictest secrecy. Even in distant lands, where, according to tradition, Mary Magdalene or other followers might have traveled, these symbols continue to appear and retain their significance. Medieval churches, ancient manuscripts, and remote crypts sometimes contain motifs that strikingly echo early Christian iconography, convincingly indicating the continuity of the transmission of certain knowledge across centuries. Could these symbols serve as a kind of map, marking a path, or be a memory of what was carried across seas and continents, representing an encoded language carefully passed down from generation to generation? The use of symbols also eloquently testifies to fear and the need for the strictest secrecy. Those entrusted with the mission of preserving sacred knowledge could not afford to record it openly. A message carved in stone or subtly integrated into architecture had a much greater chance of surviving, while words on parchment could be easily destroyed by fire. Thus, symbols transform into a special language of preservation. They become a silent conversation, conducted across time, between those who can understand it and those who must remain in complete ignorance. Some theorists even suggest that the location of hidden tombs might be indicated by astronomical alignments or a specific orientation of stones and carvings relative to celestial bodies. The angle of sunlight at a certain time, the specific arrangement of entrances or alignment with important celestial events, could well have served as secret markers for the few who were initiated into this secret. In this context, the tomb appears not merely as a stone chamber, but as a complex interplay of stone, light, and profound meaning. It is a space consciously created for deliberate protection and careful concealment. Imagine a person standing before such a tomb. Their fingers gently touch the barely discernible carvings. The dust of ages softly rises into the air. Each symbol becomes a silent question. Who placed it here, and for what purpose? What message did they seek to preserve, and for whom was this information intended? The stone speaks in its quiet, barely perceptible language, inviting the most careful observation, deep contemplation, and flight of imagination. In the broader narrative of hidden history, symbols carved in stone are not just decorative elements. They are precious remnants of memory, deliberate markers of exceptional significance, and keys to a history that powerful institutions have sought to conceal from the world for centuries. They serve as a reminder that even when history is suppressed, human ingenuity can encode truth in such a way that it is bound to survive. And thus, by tracing these carvings, one is guided not by absolute certainty, but by insatiable curiosity. Each symbol represents a kind of breadcrumb, a subtle hint, an unspoken question, carved in limestone and carried through the depths of time. Perhaps it is among these carvings that the path to a long-forgotten tomb, to a suppressed bloodline, or to knowledge carefully preserved by those brave enough to speak in silence, lies hidden. The stone, like history itself, remains unchanged. It waits patiently, and in its quiet silence, it invites the researcher to listen carefully, to see beyond the obvious, and to steadfastly follow the trail of secrets engraved on its very surface. Some tombs reveal their secrets very slowly, as if aware of the weight of centuries that have settled upon them. Beneath layers of rock, behind walls that have been rebuilt or reinforced over time, lie chambers that have remained untouched, their entrances obscured by natural formations, debris, or the careful hand of those who sought to protect what lay within. These hidden spaces are silent witnesses, preserving the echoes of those who lived before and the stories they could not tell aloud. Archaeologists sometimes stumble upon these chambers. Sometimes it happens by chance, and sometimes they are guided by subtle, barely perceptible clues: a displaced stone, an unusual depression in the ground, or symbols carved in patterns too deliberate to be ignored. What is found inside is often quite mundane. A few bones, some pottery, traces of ancient rituals, but in some cases, the chambers are unusual, exceeding expectations in size, intricately carved, or containing markings that suggest significance far beyond the everyday. Could a single hidden chamber have held within its stone walls something as significant as Jesus himself, or perhaps a sacred relic, or even irrefutable evidence of a hidden bloodline capable of changing the course of history? Such a hypothesis, however daring it may seem, cannot be dismissed out of hand. It hovers in a volatile space where a thin line separates historical fact from bold conjecture, constantly balancing on the edge of the possible. The construction of secret refuges and hiding places in ancient Judea was by no means rare. Representatives of noble and influential families sometimes commissioned the creation of meticulously designed, multi-layered tombs whose main purpose was not only to protect family remains from desecration, but also to ensure their absolute inviolability. However, the degree of secrecy mentioned in some ancient chronicles and traditions points to something far deeper and more deliberate. It refers to concealment organized in such a way that information remained inaccessible to both official authorities and curious ordinary people. Historical testimonies, whispered through the ages, speak of chambers with multiple purposes. Some were hermetically sealed, their entrances carefully disguised, while others, perhaps, were left partially accessible to initiates, maintaining the appearance of an ordinary sepulchre. Massive stones, skillfully constructed secondary walls, or intricate underground passages could have served as reliable cover, hiding the true purpose of the tomb from uninitiated eyes. Within these secluded spaces, in their silent depths, inscriptions might have been found that subtly hinted at the identity of the deceased, their beliefs, or even their lineage. However, these messages would remain a complete mystery to anyone who did not possess the key to their cipher. It is in such hidden, detached places that tangible echoes of ancient secrecy are preserved to this day. The main difficulty lies in interpretation. Many tombs contain symbols and inscriptions whose deciphering presents enormous difficulty, giving rise to incessant disputes among archaeologists and historians. Are these signs simple religious motifs, family markers indicating belonging to a certain lineage? Or are they carefully coded messages intended exclusively for the chosen few? This ambiguity ensures that even after a chamber is discovered and opened, its true meaning remains uncertain, tantalizingly close to being solved, yet frustratingly elusive. Some researchers hypothesize that the very decision to conceal these chambers was purely strategic. Followers, gripped by fears of possible desecration or unwanted interference, might have built additional, secondary, or completely secret compartments within the main tomb. These hidden spaces could serve as repositories for valuable relics, ancient manuscripts, or even the body of the deceased itself, securely preserving sacred objects or legacies. At the same time, the outer, more ordinary burial places maintained a traditional appearance, attracting no undue attention. Thus, one tomb could simultaneously serve two functions: to be both a public resting place, open for rituals, and a secret sanctuary, known only to a few initiates. Ancient legends suggest that sometimes hidden chambers could be moved or even duplicated in distant lands. These copies or transfers reflected the structure and content of the original tomb, but at the same time ensured unprecedented security of its contents in the new location. Mary Magdalene and other devoted followers, who not only carried sacred knowledge but also physically moved key elements of the sacred legacy, could have been involved in such large-scale and risky measures. Could the hidden chambers we discover many centuries later be merely echoes of those ancient, selfless efforts? To stand before an open chamber is to feel the full weight of history, its silent burden. In the dim light filtering inside, dust slowly drifts. The air within seems denser, heavier than usual, filled with centuries of waiting, and every stone seems imbued with memory, having absorbed the events of long-past days. Shadows cling to niches and ledges, as if silently hinting at untold stories lurking within these walls. A barely discernible inscription, almost erased by relentless time, gives rise to endless assumptions and conjectures. Who placed it here? And what was the true purpose of its creation? Every corner of this chamber becomes a silent question, a fragment of a grand mystery that only awaits to be pieced together. A hidden chamber is not just a physical space carved in stone or earth. It is a kind of bridge, spanning epochs. It invisibly connects those who carefully preserved secrets in the distant past with those who today seek to comprehend and understand them. The chamber embodies the fear of desecration, boundless devotion to ideals, an ingenious strategy of preservation, and an enduring hope for the future. All of this is forever enclosed in stone and earth. To reveal such a chamber is to witness a striking intersection of human ingenuity and a deep, immutable desire to preserve the sacred. And yet, the most compelling and alluring aspect of these chambers lies precisely in what they do not reveal. They provide only fragments of information, subtle hints, and a basis for speculation, but very rarely give final, indisputable answers. This seems deliberate, for the mystery itself is an integral part of the legacy, a kind of protective veil that constantly fuels curiosity and stimulates deep reflection. Hidden chambers are both revelation and concealment. They offer only a touch of the past, while preserving its full depth from easy, superficial understanding. Could one of these chambers, perhaps still undiscovered, hold the true resting place of Jesus or evidence of a bloodline carefully preserved for many generations? The question remains unanswered, but it persistently resonates, urging us to continue our search, to heed the whispers of ancient legends, and to listen to the subtle, silent language of stone, shadow, and silence. Relics have always fascinated both deeply religious believers and inquisitive skeptics. They represent tangible fragments of the sacred, concrete links to individuals whose influence extends beyond life and death. However, some relics, especially those associated with Jesus or his closest followers, were never displayed in cathedrals or public shrines. Instead, they were entrusted to secret keeping, hidden from eyes that might misuse their power or misinterpret their profound meaning. From the earliest days of the Church's existence, certain objects were considered too dangerous, too valuable, or too revealing of truths to remain in plain sight. These could be bones, fragments of sacred cloths, ancient vessels, or pieces of wood. Objects capable of confirming key stories of the crucifixion, burial, or even a bloodline were entrusted to chosen believers who fully understood their enduring value and the acute need for discretion. These guardians carefully and silently preserved them, often moving them from place to place, from Judea to remote corners of the Mediterranean, and ultimately across Europe. Mary Magdalene's role in these titanic preservation efforts is repeatedly suggested in apocryphal and legendary texts. She is depicted as the principal guardian of sacred memory, carrying not only relics and letters, but also sacred knowledge, protecting them from Roman authorities and early church hierarchies who might deem these truths heretical and dangerous. Her journeys, whether tangible movements on earthly roads or symbolic travels through centuries, defined the routes by which these ancient relics moved, carefully preserved in the deepest secrecy for countless generations. Medieval chronicles, though reaching us in fragmented form, contain faint hints that in later eras, such holy objects were protected by closed communities, among which the valiant Knights Templar held a special place. The Templars, these legendary warriors known for their unique combination of unwavering martial prowess and deep religious devotion, are asserted by some historians and theorists to have discovered artifacts closely linked to the life, death, and perhaps even the carefully hidden tomb of Jesus. The atmosphere of the strictest secrecy surrounding these priceless artifacts was maintained by unbreakable vows, complex codes, and the thoughtful placement of records. At times, they were in plain sight, but their true meaning was encoded in symbols or hidden in secret chambers, inaccessible to outsiders. In particular, one such relic, whether a fragment of ancient cloth, a bone fragment, or a mysterious vessel, is said to carry undeniable evidence of a bloodline, representing a tangible thread connecting to a history that the official church would never acknowledge. Whispers of its existence were passed down by word of mouth and recorded in ancient manuscripts for many centuries, becoming part of oral and written tradition. And while its exact location remains a mystery to this day, the very assumption of its existence has served as a powerful stimulus for numerous investigations, tumultuous speculations, and the birth of captivating legends about incredible journeys spanning all of Europe. The meticulous preservation of relics served a dual purpose, ensuring their survival and secure protection. To the uninitiated, these relics might appear to be mere ordinary sacred objects. However, to their guardians, they were more repositories of memory, irrefutable evidence of events and interconnections deliberately hidden, sometimes offering silent testimony to truths long lost to official history. These seemingly ordinary objects of stone, wood, or bone transformed into carriers of a complex narrative, awaiting their moment and discovery by those capable of tuning into their subtle, almost imperceptible language. Some researchers hypothesize that relics were hidden strategically to point to secret tombs, hidden chambers, or other places of exceptional historical significance. A fragment of a shroud, a vessel adorned with symbols, or an encoded inscription could serve as a silent indication of proximity to a hidden sepulchre, the existence of a secret bloodline, or sacred knowledge. In this context, relics are not merely sacred, they act as guides, leading the attentive observer to truths that were deliberately withheld from the public. The tension between the need for preservation and the demand for secrecy has always been palpable. The guardians of relics constantly had to contend with authorities, inquisitions, and competing factions, often moving valuable objects under the cover of night or carefully encrypting their true meaning with symbols and complex coded language. The history of these relics, therefore, is inextricably linked to the history of fear, deep piety, and the conscious decision to conceal, ensuring the survival of knowledge even in times when public understanding was extremely limited. One should also consider the psychological burden of such guardianship. Those entrusted with such a responsible mission bore the weight of responsibility not only for the physical objects themselves, but also for the profound stories that these objects embodied. Each artifact contained the memory of generations, a legacy, and potential evidence of a hidden tomb or a mysterious bloodline. The burden of secrecy was closely intertwined with piety, shaping both the methods of preserving artifacts and the principles of transmitting sacred knowledge through successive generations. Even today, the trail of these relics remains fragmentary and incomplete. Some are documented in obscure, almost forgotten manuscripts. Others are merely hinted at in encoded carvings or enigmatic, difficult to decipher records. Their movement through the labyrinths of history leaves behind only faint, barely perceptible traces that are often extremely difficult to confirm, but which are nonetheless resilient enough to inspire modern searches and generate new speculations. Could one of these relics, perhaps, point to a hidden tomb, to a secret bloodline, or to a chamber that was carefully hidden beneath centuries-old layers of stone and earth? Relics held in secret custody serve as a constant reminder that history is not only what has been recorded and officially recognized, but also what has been protected, hidden, and deliberately preserved from prying eyes. They act as vessels of memory, silently whispering truths that official historical narratives may have preferred to suppress. And in these silent testimonies, the mysteries of hidden tombs, suppressed bloodlines, and carefully protected legacies continue to survive, awaiting those who, with curiosity and patience, will follow their subtle, almost imperceptible guidance. Reflecting on the careful preservation of these relics, we gradually begin to realize that the hidden tomb is not just a final resting place. It is an integral part of a broader and more complex network of secrets that have been transported, guarded, and preserved through deep piety, thoughtful strategy, and an unwavering willingness to protect what the world was not yet ready to see. Relics speak softly, but their voice is persistent, urging us to continue the journey through the hidden corridors of history. Among the countless guardians of sacred knowledge and holy relics, few have so profoundly captured the human imagination as the Knights Templar. Founded in the early 12th century, this powerful military order became legendary not only for its exceptional valor in battles, but also for its presumed connection to mysteries far older than the order itself. Some researchers are convinced that the Templars were entrusted with relics associated with Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and hidden tombs whose very existence directly challenged conventional and orthodox history. The order's rise coincided with an era of great geographical discoveries, mass pilgrimages, and deep religious fervor. Their colossal wealth, extensive influence, and vast network of fortresses spanning all of Europe provided them with both the necessary means and a secure cover for preserving these extraordinary treasures. Traditions whisper that among these countless riches lay artifacts of colossal spiritual and historical significance. There was talk of fragments of the true cross, preserved burial shrouds, and enigmatic documents or other objects subtly hinting at the existence of a suppressed, hidden bloodline. Among the many hypotheses, one of the most intriguing is the suggestion that the Knights Templar discovered irrefutable evidence pointing to the existence of a hidden tomb or entire secret burial sites. Notably, the order's main headquarters, located in Jerusalem and Acre, were in close proximity to the ancient holy sites of Judea, which could have facilitated such discoveries. At the same time, their later European strongholds, erected across the continent, could well have served as reliable refuges and repositories for the valuable objects they so carefully guarded. Is it possible that the Templars, in the course of their investigations, stumbled upon sepulchres unknown to either the official church or Rome itself, and realizing their colossal significance, took every possible measure to preserve them, protecting them from oblivion, destruction, or misuse? Some historical data and circumstantial evidence suggest that the Templars acted not merely as fearless protectors of Christian pilgrims and holy sites, but also as inquisitive, tireless seekers of sacred knowledge, with the same unwavering discipline that distinguished them on the battlefield. They pursued sacred knowledge, diligently searching for ancient relics, holy texts, and mysterious symbols. These discoveries, in their view, could shed light on the life and death of Jesus, revealing facets beyond the generally accepted official narrative. Their famous secrecy, often misunderstood or even maliciously slandered by contemporaries, was an integral part of their great mission. It enabled the Templar Knights to securely guard what other forces might seek to appropriate, distort, or consign to oblivion. Rennes-le-Château, this picturesque yet secluded village nestled in the heart of southern France, has long been firmly linked to intriguing Templar legends and their hidden treasures. Numerous ancient manuscripts, mysterious maps, and even architectural symbols skillfully woven into structures suggest that the Templars might have left behind an entire system of clues. These messages, encoded in both the stone of monumental structures and on fragile parchment, allegedly pointed to the location of sacred artifacts or to repositories of sacred knowledge. The Order's association with the figure of Mary Magdalene and the possibility of a presumed bloodline adds another equally captivating layer of intrigue to this mosaic. This circumstance suggests that the Templars' interest in these mysteries was not only deeply spiritual, but also distinctly historical and, crucially, protective in nature. The brutal suppression of the Templar Order in the early 14th century, initiated by King Philip IV of France and supported by Pope Clement V, gives all these theories an especially poignant and tragic resonance. Mass arrests, show trials, and the subsequent agonizing executions of the knights were carried out under grave accusations of heresy, blatant blasphemy, and the performance of secret, forbidden rituals. Could part of the heresy they were accused of truly lie in their possession of knowledge about hidden tombs or the existence of a forbidden bloodline? Or were all these accusations merely a convenient pretext for the greedy seizure of their vast holdings and immense wealth? Perhaps the world at that time was simply not ready to accept the profound and shocking mysteries that the Templars so carefully guarded. It is noteworthy that even after the official dissolution of the order and the brutal reprisals against its members, the whispers of the legendary Templar treasures, their sacred relics, and encoded knowledge did not die out, but continued to live on, passed down by word of mouth. Evidence of this includes discovered hidden archives, mysterious manuscripts full of symbols and allegories, and the continuous, sometimes hidden, veneration of Mary Magdalene in some European regions. All this suggests that the profound essence of the Templars' mission did not vanish without a trace, but was carefully preserved and passed down by the few who fully understood the true meaning of secrecy and the weight of the legacy left behind. The connection to the Templars thus urges us to view this history more broadly, suggesting the existence of an entire, extensive network for the preservation of sacred knowledge and artifacts operating over many centuries. Such tombs, sacred relics, secret bloodlines, and enigmatic symbols did not exist in isolation. On the contrary, they were elements of a carefully designed and deliberate strategy aimed at protecting invaluable knowledge from those who might misuse or distort its meaning. The Order's fortresses, monasteries, and numerous secret vaults functioned as nodes in this invisible network, securely guarding truths that official historical chronicles preferred to ignore or even actively suppress. Is it possible that one of these carefully disguised repositories still exists today, carefully preserving within its depths the keys to solving the mystery of the hidden tomb or to a long-forgotten bloodline? Perhaps, like the relics they so skillfully protected, The evidence of their activities exists only in fragments, in artfully encoded symbols, in unexpected architectural alignments, or in enigmatic, seemingly disjointed records. They patiently await their hour until a sufficiently patient, inquisitive, and attentive researcher comes along, capable of following this invisible trail. Thus, the connection to the Templars convincingly reminds us that secrecy can play a dual role, being both a reliable shield and an invisible bridge. It allows sacred knowledge and crucial truths to survive and be transmitted through the crucible of political upheavals, brutal religious repressions, and the relentless destructive effects of time. It is thanks to their unparalleled vigilance and unceasing guardianship that precious relics and vital historical information have been preserved to this day, maintaining a subtle but strong thread of continuity that stretches from the ancient hills of Judea to the lost villages and majestic cathedrals of Europe. Tracing their difficult path, we begin to realize that the hidden tomb, if it exists, is not a singular, isolated place, but rather an integral fragment of a much larger and more complex tapestry of preserving sacred truths. The Templars' unwavering commitment to secrecy and their tireless efforts to protect suggest that everything that has reached us, be it material relics, enigmatic symbols, or merely the faint whisper of legends, is just the tip of the iceberg, a superficial manifestation of a much deeper and more comprehensive mystery. It patiently awaits those who dare to look beyond the obvious and delve into the shadows of long-past eras. Mysteries possess an astonishing ability to travel through time silently and imperceptibly, like a soft, barely perceptible current hidden beneath the turbulent river of history. The hidden tomb, the long-suppressed bloodline, and the precious sacred relics exist not only in tangible physical spaces, but also continue to live in the barely discernible whispers passed down from generation to generation. These are stories carefully transmitted from one guardian to another, from generation to generation. These are messages skillfully encrypted in symbols and legends that continue to whisper in the dark, forgotten corners of ancient monasteries, impregnable fortresses, and the most remote, lost villages. For countless centuries, this unceasing whisper crossed boundless oceans and towering mountain ranges, spreading throughout the world. Even early followers, fearing cruel Roman persecutions and oppression, preserved these sacred messages with incredible caution and care, unceasingly ensuring that invaluable knowledge about tombs, bloodlines, and sacred relics would under no circumstances fall into malicious hands. The language of this whisper was extremely subtle and multifaceted. It was built on carefully coded phrases, ambiguous symbols, and most importantly, on absolute personal trust between guardians. A single careless movement or word could reveal too much, while only extreme circumspection and prudence ensured the survival of these precious secrets, keeping them beyond the reach of omnipresent inquisitors and powerful emperors. With the advent of medieval Europe, this ancient whisper found new, equally devoted guardians. For centuries, secret fraternities, among which the Templars, Cathars, and certain monastic orders stood out, took on the role of preserving unique information that had been deliberately excluded from generally accepted historical narratives. These age-old mysteries found their havens in the most unexpected forms. They were hidden in concealed manuscripts, carefully preserved in the depths of library vaults, etched into skillful carvings, organically integrated into cathedral stone arches, and manifested as mysterious inscriptions engraved in ancient tombs. All these artifacts served as silent guides, pointing the way to sacred knowledge. Every such whisper, every barely perceptible indication, only strengthened the continuous chain of this story. A story that was so potentially dangerous that it could not be told openly without risk. Traditions and legends bring us stories of coded messages, skillfully inscribed on fragile parchments. These messages were masterfully disguised, taking the form of pious prayers, solemn hymns, or even ordinary everyday correspondence, which made them invisible to uninitiated eyes. Some of these valuable scrolls and messages traveled across vast territories, guarded by trusted envoys who fully understood their exceptional significance. Others were carefully hidden beneath thick stone slabs, or buried deep in forgotten, long-abandoned libraries, patiently awaiting the arrival of the few chosen who would be able to decipher their silent, invisible language. Notably, even today, researchers and scholars continue to discover fragmented pieces that merely hint at the existence of truths, presumably never intended for wide dissemination. This centuries-old whisper also eloquently testifies to the deeply ingrained human desire for knowledge preservation. Those who bore the burden of preserving these sacred mysteries were well aware of the scale of possible consequences. There was a real threat that history could be completely rewritten, priceless relics irrevocably destroyed, and entire bloodlines erased from memory if this knowledge fell into improper hands. Thus, this whisper served a dual function. It was both a shield, protecting secrets, and a means of their transmission, a way of preserving invaluable heritage without the need to expose it to risky public disclosure and scrutiny. One can imagine how this elusive whisper might have intersected and interacted with the location of the hidden tomb. For example, a symbol skillfully carved into an ancient Judean sepulchre might well have found its counterpart in a mysterious inscription discovered within the walls of a distant French monastery, creating an invisible thread between them. Similarly, an encoded manuscript might have contained references to a secret bloodline, which was protected by significant figures like Mary Magdalene or guarded by a devoted Templar keeper. For many centuries and across vast continents, these disparate fragments of knowledge weave a delicate yet strong web of memory and protection, patiently awaiting interpretation by the few who can listen carefully to their silent message. Notably, even the most massive political upheavals and brutal religious repressions could not completely silence this persistent whisper or erase it from collective memory. Such historical events as the Crusades, ruthless inquisitions, and the subsequent dissolution of powerful orders, including the Templars, paradoxically only contributed to a greater scattering of the guardians of these mysteries. This led to the spread of precious fragments of knowledge to new, previously unexplored territories. Each such relocation triggered a domino effect, causing a chain reaction. Relics moved to new refuges, tombs were carefully concealed, and oral traditions were passed down by word of mouth exclusively in whispers. All these measures ensured the survival of secrets that might otherwise have been irrevocably lost to time. This whisper by its nature seems fragile and elusive, yet its persistence is astonishing. It travels through the pages of ancient manuscripts, lives in the depths of oral traditions, and manifests in the intricate patterns of stone and architectural elements, becoming part of the surrounding world. These are not thunderous declarations, but rather the most subtle hints that, like invisible threads, lead the attentive observer to long-hidden truths. And by following this elusive whisper, one begins to realize the continuity, the unbreakable chain of guardians that stretches from the ancient hills of Judea to the most remote, mysterious corners of Europe. The very nature of this whisper inevitably raises deep philosophical questions. How incomplete is what we have come to accept as full history? What truths have been deliberately suppressed or irrevocably forgotten over the centuries? And if a tomb remains hidden to this day, what role did this whisper play in its astonishing preservation? Tracing these subtle, barely perceptible currents through the centuries, we are inadvertently reminded that history is recorded not only on the pages of official texts or in majestic monuments. It is also transmitted in silence, in careful circumspection, and in the selfless devotion of those who guard its secrets. The whisper itself serves as irrefutable proof. It unequivocally signals the existence of secrets that were too delicate, too powerful, or too dangerous to be revealed openly for public view. Thus, the hidden tomb appears not merely as some physical space, but as a focal point of deep memory, carefully guarded secrecy, and reverent piety. Its astonishing existence is sustained only by the echoes of time, by that very whisper that managed to survive, despite the fall of empires, the brutality of inquisitions, and centuries of continuous suppression. Following these echoes, one begins to see a world where knowledge is preserved not through public display, but through deep trust, unceasing care, and the subtle art of keeping secrets, passed down from generation to generation. Notably, even as the whisper carefully preserved memory, physical clues were sometimes left behind, intended either to guide or, conversely, to deliberately mislead those who dared to seek the hidden tomb. Maps, ancient manuscripts, and even architectural plans could contain such hints. But by no means were all of them straightforward or easy to read. Some of these indications were deliberate decoys, artfully designed to protect the sacred from those who might try to use it for their own selfish purposes. Others were fragmented, irrevocably damaged by relentless time, or encoded so subtly and gracefully that only the most discerning and attentive researchers could decipher them and follow the indicated path. In the medieval era, maps ceased to be mere tools of navigation. They transformed into powerful means of preserving secrecy. A cartographer might depict a hill, a picturesque valley, or a winding river, while adding the most subtle symbols that indicated a hidden place. However, to a casual, uninitiated observer, these markings would appear completely harmless and devoid of hidden meaning. Thus, a monastery might be marked with an unusual flourish of a pen, a modest chapel with a symbol of Magdalene, and a small hill with an ambiguous, equivocal inscription. But for those who held the key to this secret language, every line, every stroke, and every mark on the map could point to sacred paths, precise burial sites, or hidden chambers. Nevertheless, to any outsider, this map would appear completely ordinary, arousing no suspicion. Legends tell of untold treasures and ancient tombs marked on parchments that have since been either lost or carefully hidden from prying eyes. For example, the famous maps associated with the mysterious Rennes-le-Château unequivocally hint at the existence of priceless relics and profound secrets buried deep underground. Moreover, some of these maps could contain complex mathematical codes, indications of celestial alignments, or enigmatic sequences of letters that were specifically designed to disorient and confuse any uninitiated seeker. Could these maps have been created with the purpose of concealing a secret tomb, protecting a sacred bloodline, or guarding relics whose significance was too great to reveal openly? Often, misleading clues were the result of conscious design. The guardians of priceless relics and ancient sepulchres were well aware that insatiable curiosity, greed, and political intrigue could destroy the mysteries they sought to preserve. By devising false routes or scattering fragments of information across vast areas, they ensured that only those with genuine knowledge, extraordinary patience, and keen insight would approach the truth. For example, a map might point to a hill, but only a specific rock formation or an intricate stone carving would serve as the correct direction to a hidden chamber. Even the simplest elements of the environment could carry deep symbolic meaning. Rivers, roads, or majestic mountain ranges sometimes designated specific territories, indicated coincidences with celestial phenomena, or marked paths taken by Mary Magdalene and her followers in their travels. A strategically located monastery could function as a landmark, a secure repository, or a secret marker for the initiated. Throughout Europe, characteristic patterns can be traced that suggest that sacred relics and esoteric knowledge were disseminated with particular care to avoid their destruction and preserve them in the strictest secrecy. However, maps also carried significant danger. A misinterpretation of a symbol, choosing the wrong path, or premature disclosure of sacred knowledge could provoke the wrath of authorities, inquisitors, or rivals. Many hidden tombs and ancient relics remain undiscovered, precisely because the clues leading to them proved excessively intricate, the symbols too subtle for a superficial glance, and the routes deliberately misleading. Only great patience, extreme circumspection, and a deep understanding of historical context and symbolism could lead to the uncovering of the truth. The interplay between genuine landmarks and deliberate misdirection forms a complex puzzle that has captivated researchers, historians, and treasure hunters for centuries. Even when fragments of ancient maps reach us today, the full picture rarely appears clear. One symbol might point to a tomb, another to a relic, and a third, perhaps, serves only as a distraction. Thus, interpretation becomes a delicate art, requiring a balance between intuitive foresight and accumulated knowledge, between solid historical facts and bold speculation. It is quite possible that some maps, lost over time, could have indicated paths to still hidden tombs, to still preserved relics, or to carefully guarded bloodlines. Others, perhaps, are merely decoys, designed to test the seeker's devotion, intellect, or moral purity. Consequently, the journey itself becomes an integral part of the preservation strategy, ensuring that only the cautious, patient, and reverent will approach the sacred. Ancient maps and deliberately misleading clues serve as a reminder that history is often multi-layered, intentionally veiled, and shaped to survive through a combination of cunning, secrecy, and unwavering devotion. They are a testament to human ingenuity, a bridge connecting the past and present, and a silent guide for those willing to look beyond the obvious. The hidden tomb, therefore, is never a simple destination. It is part of a sprawling network of signs, symbols, and paths that cross centuries, lands, and minds. To follow these traces requires patience, keen attention, and an understanding that not every path leads where it seemingly points. Some are designed to protect, some to mislead, and some to reveal only to those truly worthy. Southern France, with its picturesque hills, hidden valleys, and secluded villages, has long served as a repository of legendary whispers and half-forgotten secrets. Among the most enigmatic of these are stories related to Mary Magdalene, sacred relics, and the possibility of a hidden tomb. This is a region where history, myth, and secrecy intertwine in a way that continues to intrigue historians, treasure hunters, and all who seek the extraordinary. Rennes-le-Château, a tiny village perched on a hilltop, is perhaps the most famous of these legendary locations. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a local parish priest named Béranger Saunière reportedly discovered documents and relics that hinted at a hidden treasure or a secret history. The details of these findings remain unclear, shrouded in numerous disputes. Nevertheless, their implications have fueled diverse speculations for over a century. Could these discoveries point to a tomb, an ancient bloodline, or knowledge deliberately hidden for many generations? The legends of southern France do not exist in isolation. Local oral traditions, obscure manuscripts, and symbolic carvings suggest that this region could have become a refuge for relics and sacred knowledge transported from Judea and beyond. Mary Magdalene often takes center stage in these narratives, depicted as a traveler, guardian, and bearer of profound secrets. Her presumed arrival in Provence, the care she took in preserving relics, and the places associated with her journeys, all add new layers of mystery, hinting that this remote region might have been a deliberate sanctuary for what the Church sought to suppress. A number of researchers tend to believe that the region's geography played a crucial role. Deeply hidden valleys, winding hilly ridges, and secluded settlements offered a natural barrier, a reliable refuge, which significantly complicated comprehensive and thorough search operations for authorities or relentless inquisitors. The meticulously planned location of monastic abodes, modest chapels, and powerful fortifications at key, strategically important points could also have served as unique landmarks, secure repositories, or impregnable refuges for priceless relics and ancient manuscripts. Amidst these picturesque yet rugged landscapes, the confidentiality of information and location could be maintained not only through unceasing human vigilance and caution, but also by the very topography of the region, its natural features. Symbols skillfully carved or engraved on the walls of temples, gravestones, and ancient monuments in southern France add an additional, sometimes enigmatic, facet to the fabric of these ancient traditions. Some of them are barely noticeable, laconic, such as simple crosses, stars, or intricate spirals, while others are significantly more complex and multifaceted, prompting reflections on encrypted meanings, carefully coded messages, or specific instructions intended exclusively for a circle of initiates who possess the key to their decipherment. Numerous researchers and enthusiastic amateurs have made repeated attempts to interpret and understand these symbols, hypothesizing their inseparable connection with the person of Mary Magdalene, with the powerful order of the Templars, and even with an ancient bloodline whose existence official historiography largely preferred to suppress or ignore entirely. Legends invariably focus on one central idea, the idea of preservation, of guarding values. Those who were carriers of sacred knowledge or guardians of sacred relics showed exceptional care and vigilance in protecting them. Despite significant personal risk and threat to life, whether forced flight from cruel persecutions, skillful evasion of the all-seeing eye of the Inquisition, or careful concealment from secular authorities. These selfless guardians of secrets tirelessly sought safety and complete isolation, using both the features of the geographical landscape and close cooperation with a circle of trusted, reliable communities. Southern France, with its numerous hidden grottos, villages lost among the hills, and cunning secret passages, likely provided the most favorable and ideal environment for carrying out such a delicate mission of preservation. The stories, moreover, point to the existence of an extensive network, rather than the concentration of all values in a single isolated place. Relics, tombs, and manuscripts were likely dispersed across many different locations, with each of these points connected to others by subtle signs, oral instructions, or complex coded symbols. Such a strategy of dispersion would have made it virtually impossible for the uninitiated to piece together a complete and coherent picture, thereby ensuring the survival and continuity of sacred knowledge, even if individual fragments were discovered or, even worse, irrevocably destroyed. However, as is often the case with all legends without exception, the boundaries between reliable facts and artistic fiction are inextricably intertwined. Despite the fact that official historical chronicles and records appear very sparse, the striking vitality and resilience of these narratives, passed down from generation to generation for many centuries, suggest that they contain something more than just an ordinary myth or tale. They act as guardians of memory, much like faint whispers, enigmatic symbols, and precious relics do, acting subtly, with boundless patience, and under unceasing, careful protection. The enduring fascination and allure of southern France are due not only to the primitive search for material treasures or simple human curiosity. It serves as a reflection of a deep, sometimes unconscious truth about the inherent human desire to preserve what is perceived as sacred, carefully hidden, and truly extraordinary. As velvet night gently descends upon the picturesque hills of Provence, one involuntarily conjures the image of Mary Magdalene walking through these ancient landscapes, bearing the burden of valuable relics, passing down important instructions from generation to generation, and thereby ensuring the continued existence of mysteries that, if revealed, could profoundly change our understanding of the very essence of history. Every secluded settlement, every humble chapel, every hidden grove transforms into a silent yet eloquent witness to the preservation of invaluable heritage, and perhaps the eternal resting place of a hidden tomb. Delving into these legends and following their threads, we begin to clearly outline for ourselves a unique map of secrecy, deep piety, and exceptional caution, stretching through the depths of time, from the ancient world to the Middle Ages, and even penetrating deeply into the modern human imagination. Southern France continues to be that unique place where the currents of history and unsolved mystery merge, where ancient whispers are carefully preserved, and where the hidden tomb, quite likely, still rests in its concealment, patiently awaiting those who will show the readiness and diligence to follow the carefully left ancient traces. Throughout centuries of human history, individuals entrusted with the safekeeping of sacred knowledge have often resorted to using various codes and ciphers as a reliable means of protection. Ancient manuscripts, skillfully composed using complex ciphers, enigmatic symbols, or carefully veiled language, allowed guardians to preserve vital information, preventing its disclosure to those not initiated into the secret. Some examples of these coded texts contain hints of hidden tombs, of ancient, carefully concealed bloodlines, and of priceless relics that were diligently protected from both authorities and greedy opportunists. In the vast libraries of monasteries, in secluded cloisters, and even in private collections, there is still a possibility of discovering such coded manuscripts. Their complexity varies from elementary substitution ciphers to extremely intricate combinations of letters, numerical values, and graphic symbols, which are often skillfully interwoven with marginalia or picturesque illustrations. At first glance, many of them may seem completely harmless, resembling ordinary religious texts or dry scientific treatises. However, only a meticulous and deep analysis can reveal hidden layers of meaning, messages whose deciphering is accessible only to the few who possess the coveted key to their solution. Some of these encryptions, it is believed, have a direct connection to early Christian communities, especially those forced to exist and operate in the strictest secrecy. A number of prominent scholars hypothesize that Mary Magdalene or her loyal followers may have initiated the creation or inspired the first examples of these manuscripts, encrypting knowledge of sacred relics or hidden tombs in such a way that this information could safely survive the coming centuries. Such codes allowed them to transmit valuable information without openly confronting church authority and avoiding cruel persecutions. In later eras, secret societies and powerful orders, such as the legendary Knights Templar, could well have inherited or creatively adapted these ancient manuscripts for their needs. Their deep knowledge of cryptography, direct access to valuable manuscripts, and unwavering commitment to the idea of preservation allowed them to ensure the continuous transmission of this sacred knowledge for many generations. It is not excluded that the manuscripts could have been deliberately divided into parts, with individual fragments stored in completely different remote locations, which forced any inquisitive seeker to meticulously piece together a complete narrative, often requiring exceptional diligence, deep knowledge, and extraordinary insight. The presence of coded manuscripts inevitably suggests a profound and conscious foresight. Those initiated into the mysteries recognized that the passage of centuries would inevitably bring threats to the preservation of their legacy, whether through insatiable human curiosity, greed, or doctrinal intolerance. By embedding precious knowledge within multi-layered encryption systems, these guardians erected a robust barrier that simultaneously concealed and protected information, ensuring that the true truth would reach only those who exhibited due patience and reverence. It is equally important that such manuscripts also served as ingenious tools of ambiguity. Even if a single fragment of such a text were discovered, its interpretation invariably presented an exceptionally difficult task, for the symbols embedded within could possess multiple meanings, and individual letters might point to specific names, significant dates, or geographical coordinates. At the same time, illustrations accompanying the text could function not only as mnemonic devices, but also serve as subtle yet extremely important markers of special significance. It is not impossible that some of these manuscripts contain highly precise directives concerning the search for hidden tombs, sacred relics, or even information about a certain sacred bloodline. Nevertheless, without possessing the coveted key, the knowledge itself remained sealed and inaccessible. Across the vast expanses of Europe, and especially in those areas inextricably linked to the history of the Templar order or steeped in traditions of Mary Magdalene. Coded manuscripts have for generations served as an inexhaustible source of inspiration for scholars, inquisitive historians, and adventurous treasure seekers. From the picturesque lands of southern France to the majestic repositories of knowledge in the libraries of Rome, these ancient texts stand as silent witnesses to centuries of secrecy, invariably offering only vague hints, but never providing definitive confirmations. The coded language itself acts as a guarantee that only those minds capable of tuning into the perception of the finest patterns and hidden connections will ever comprehend the fullness of the story contained within them. Moreover, the application of such encrypted manuscripts clearly demonstrates a profound philosophy oriented towards preservation rather than immediate disclosure. The primary goal of the creators was not to achieve instantaneous understanding, but to ensure the survival of invaluable information through the depths of time. Thus, each manuscript appears as an unbreakable bridge, spanning centuries, carefully carrying fragments of ancient memories, subtle hints of sacred places, and undeniable traces of some important bloodline. Their astonishing durability serves as vivid testament to the meticulous and selfless care of those who valued the preservation of secrecy no less than their own devotion to the cause. And so, through the ages, these manuscripts continue their unseen existence, silently whispering their secrets in an enigmatic, barely perceptible language. They serve as a kind of invitation to deep curiosity, a serious test for sophisticated intellect, and unshakable guardians of collective memory. Some of them still remain carefully hidden within the walls of private collections, inaccessible to the general public. Others gather dust, forgotten, on old monastic shelves or deep beneath layers of ancient dust in vast library archives. And yet, despite their physical location, each coded manuscript represents a priceless thread, woven into a much broader tapestry of preservation, skillfully connecting hidden tombs, sacred relics, and those bloodlines whose existence the world has been taught to forget or ignore entirely. Delving into reflections on these coded manuscripts, it becomes evident that secrecy in their case acted not as a limiting factor, but rather as a carefully designed and deliberate strategy. For neither the hidden tomb, nor the guarded relics, nor the carefully preserved bloodlines were ever intended for hasty or thoughtless discovery. The codes themselves demand from the researcher not only boundless patience and deep insight, but also a special reverence, thereby emphasizing the fundamental idea: humanity's greatest secrets are precisely those that are carefully hidden from prying eyes and thoughtfully passed down from generation to generation. When imagination carries us into the world of these mysterious manuscripts, one almost physically senses the invisible whisper of their long-departed creators, as if inviting us to embark on their path, step by step following the traces left behind, deciphering each symbol, and approaching the sacred truths of history with utmost caution, boundless patience, and deep humility. If we assume that a hidden tomb held something significantly more than just physical remains, if it also guarded the legacy of an entire bloodline, then an acute need inevitably arose for someone to undertake the mission of protecting it. For many centuries, the very concept of guardianship was by no means limited to purely symbolic meaning. It manifested as an active, purposeful, and often extremely risky undertaking. These guardians were entrusted with the sacred duty of preserving memory, valuable relics, and irrefutable evidence of a sacred bloodline, with the aim of ensuring its survival in the face of challenges posed by authorities who might seek to suppress or completely eradicate this information. Among the first guardians could well have been Jesus' early followers. Prominent figures such as Mary Magdalene, Joseph of Arimathea, and perhaps other individuals whose names are now irrevocably lost to historical memory. Their knowledge extended far beyond simple scriptural interpretation and personal faith. They bore the colossal responsibility of protecting tangible evidence. This could include remains, crucial documents, precious relics, and, of course, the living memory of a bloodline that dominant history sought with all its might to conceal. These people deeply understood that the sacred had to be carefully hidden and preserved in such a way that it could safely survive the coming centuries of instability, cruel persecutions, and all-consuming institutional power. Over the centuries, this crucial role was gradually taken on by various secret groups and powerful orders. Among them, the Order of the Templars, distinguished by its strict discipline structure, the presence of strategically important fortresses, and an unwavering commitment to secrecy, became one of the most famous and influential guardianship networks. However, the circle of guardians was by no means limited exclusively to military orders. Individual families, cohesive religious communities, and even selfless individuals also acted as vigilant guardians of sacred knowledge, passing it down from generation to generation, either through oral tradition or through complex coded manuscripts and symbols. In essence, guardianship was never a passive state. It demanded exceptional vigilance, keen intellect, and extraordinary resourcefulness from its participants. Those entrusted with the sacred bloodline had to constantly anticipate potential threats, be they ruthless inquisitions, bloody crusades, treacherous thefts, or perfidious betrayals. They masterfully acquired the art of concealing relics in secret chambers, virtuously encrypting manuscripts, and skillfully disguising important locations, using features of the geographical landscape or ingenious architectural solutions. Each subsequent generation meticulously instructed the next, transmitting knowledge only in fragments to ensure the continuity of succession without the slightest risk of full exposure. Some evidence suggests that these guardians were not limited to their own efforts, but also actively developed extensive networks of trusted allies. Thus, they created a complex and multifaceted system of protection that spanned vast geographical areas and successfully overcame the temporal barriers of entire epochs. The hidden tomb, located in ancient Judea, could well have found its symbolic reflection in various markers scattered across the lands of France, Italy, or other countries, each serving either as reliable protection or as a silent reminder of something sacred. Valuable relics could be moved with the utmost caution and secrecy, ancient manuscripts diligently copied under the strictest secrecy, and age-old oral traditions carefully preserved and passed down from generation to generation. All these actions were dictated by a single goal: to ensure the reliable protection of a certain bloodline and all the priceless heritage inextricably linked to it. The burden of responsibility placed on the guardians carried a significant moral weight. Protecting and preserving this bloodline extended far beyond merely maintaining historical records. It was a profound act of devotion, a manifestation of unwavering loyalty to something whose significance surpassed the individual aspirations and personal interests of each person. Individuals who were granted this exceptional trust were well aware that even the slightest oversight or misstep could irrevocably destroy the results of centuries of painstaking and selfless preservation, while the skillful and successful management of these mysteries ensured the continued existence of sacred memory. Tradition holds that some of the guardians chose to live their entire lives without ever revealing the sacred knowledge they possessed. They consciously chose obscurity, rejecting any public recognition or fame. Their names, in all likelihood, will never find their place in official historical chronicles, and their great deeds may be irrevocably lost in the flow of time. Nevertheless, their invisible influence is tangibly manifested in the fact that relics, ancient manuscripts, and hidden chambers continue to exist to this day, having survived many epochs. These invisible, silent guardians have become unseen threads, skillfully weaving together the past with the present, faith with history, and secrecy with memory. Even today, preserved traces of their guardianship can be found. Mysterious symbols carved in stone, enigmatic coded manuscripts, and enduring oral traditions serve as subtle hints of the existence of a bloodline that was guarded with exceptional care. Modern scholars and enthusiastic amateurs tirelessly continue their attempts to interpret these ancient signs and messages. However, the true scale of their activities and the depth of their investigations largely remain hidden from the general public. The guardians themselves deeply understood that secrecy was not only a reliable shield for protection, but also a unique form of achieving immortality for what they guarded. This bloodline survived through the ages not through public glorification or widespread renown, but precisely because it was unceasingly guarded. Ultimately, the very concept of the existence of such guardians challenges our established notions of history and how it is formed. While official historical chronicles may at times deliberately erase or conceal certain facts, those who preserve values in deep silence actually ensure their continuous existence and continuity. The elusive tomb, precious relics, ancient manuscripts, and the bloodline itself exist not thanks to widespread public recognition, but solely thanks to caring and selflessly devoted guardians who invariably placed the sacred above personal recognition or any material gain. Reflecting on the role of these guardians of the bloodline, we are inadvertently reminded that history is shaped not only by those who hide and protect, but also by those who document and present it to the world. The aforementioned hidden tomb is not merely a geographical location. It is an integral part of a living, constantly evolving historical tapestry, sustained by unwavering devotion, deep secrecy, and the unceasing vigilance of those entrusted with its care. Thus, the legacy of guardianship continues its existence, forming a quiet, invisible bloodline of devotion that permeates centuries, preserving mysteries that still possess an attractive force. These mysteries, as if inviting curious minds to follow the path laid out by those who perfectly understood the delicate balance between the need for secrecy and ensuring survival. Throughout human history, the process of preserving hidden knowledge has often clashed directly with manifestations of power. The more sacred, controversial, or politically sensitive a secret was, the more intense were the efforts undertaken to suppress it. If the hidden tomb, valuable relics, and the bloodline itself contained truths capable of challenging established authority, it is not surprising that entire generations of rulers church representatives and other influential figures acted with extreme determination, striving either to completely conceal or to discredit these objects and the data associated with them. From the very first years following the crucifixion, the balance of power remained extremely fragile and unstable. The Roman Empire sought to establish complete control over Judea, while emerging religious communities fiercely struggled to define orthodoxy and consolidate their own power. Any tomb, any relics, or any bloodline that did not fit into the officially sanctioned historical narrative was perceived as a direct threat to the existing order. The silencing of undesirable witnesses, the active suppression of oral traditions, and strict control over access to sacred places became powerful tools designed to ensure that history would reflect only that version of events deemed acceptable and favorable to the ruling circles. As the Church gradually consolidated its power over the centuries, the methods of suppression took on new and more sophisticated forms. Documents containing hints of alternative historical narratives were ruthlessly burned. Valuable manuscripts disappeared without a trace, and dissenting voices were decisively silenced. Places where relics or tombs were rumored to be kept were repurposed, completely destroyed, or carefully concealed. Moreover, even architectural forms and symbols were manipulated to replace, erase, or mislead those who sought knowledge beyond officially approved teachings. At the same time, the methods of suppression were not limited to overt and open actions. More subtle strategies also played a significant role, such as strict control over the transmission of knowledge, active promotion of alternative legends, and the creation of obstacles to any independent inquiries. Clergy, influential scholars, and political authorities worked together to ensure that any trace of inconvenient truths remained either carefully hidden, fragmented, or always open to deliberate misinterpretation. As a result, a historical record was formed that was extremely carefully compiled to protect institutional power, thereby effectively masking potentially transformative information. Powerful and influential individuals were well aware of the immense influence that sacred relics and ancient tombs possessed. Controlling such objects could grant not only spiritual legitimacy, but also significant political advantage, and often both factors simultaneously. The hidden tomb and its associated relics could potentially pose a serious challenge to existing authority by presenting an alternative version of history or a different bloodline that would undermine official narratives. To prevent such a development, suppression was carried out not merely as a reaction to an emerging threat. It was systematic, persistent, and often utterly ruthless. The fate of the Templars represents one of the most striking examples of such a phenomenon. This powerful order, accused of heresy and subversive activities, was eventually disbanded. Its leaders met their death by execution, and all its vast riches were confiscated. However, a number of researchers hypothesized that the true motives for these actions extended significantly beyond ordinary political or financial gains. There is an opinion that the Templars possessed valuable knowledge, unique relics, and perhaps even evidence of a hidden tomb, as well as information about a sacred bloodline. Thus, their suppression likely became a carefully considered strategic step aimed at silencing the guardians of these mysteries and eliminating any potential threat to generally accepted and established narratives. Among other things, this suppression created an atmosphere of pervasive fear and extreme circumspection among those who possessed sacred secrets. guardians fully aware of the possible fatal consequences began to act even more cautiously. They moved valuable relics, encrypted ancient manuscripts, and hid tombs in places that did not arouse any suspicion from the authorities. The interaction between the desire for protection and the efforts of suppression led to a paradoxical result. The secrecy of the sacred did not weaken, but on the contrary, intensified, despite all attempts by power to eradicate it. For many centuries, suppression influenced not only what remained hidden, but also how this information was preserved in memory, or conversely, consigned to oblivion. Oral traditions fragmented. Manuscripts were irrevocably lost or deliberately destroyed, and significant places were altered or carefully concealed. Nevertheless, this very effort of suppression paradoxically ensured that some elements did survive, albeit in very subtle ways, in symbols carved in stone, in enigmatic manuscripts, and in the whispers of legends passed down through generations of guardians. The tension that arose between concealment and suppression created a multi-layered veil of mystery, making the hidden tomb even more elusive and at the same time incredibly alluring. Even today, traces of this suppression continue to be discovered. Controversial manuscripts, obscure historical references, and anomalous archaeological finds hint at truths that power once sought to erase from collective memory. The deliberate erasure of knowledge only deepens the veil of mystery. Gaps in historical records, silences in narratives, and contradictory accounts all point to the existence of a history far deeper than those presented in commonly accepted reports. The suppression carried out by power serves as a reminder that history is never neutral. It is shaped by those who control the narrative, impose orthodoxy, and protect their power. And yet, surprisingly, suppression often serves as a tool of preservation by driving knowledge underground, forcing guardians into the shadows. It ensures the survival of the hidden tomb, valuable relics, and a sacred bloodline, patiently awaiting those who will approach them with genuine curiosity, deep respect, and insight. The shadow of suppression teaches us to be cautious and vigilant. It reminds us that the most transformative truths are often the least recognized, and that the search for history's hidden layers requires not only insight and patience, but also an awareness of the powerful forces that have shaped memory itself for centuries. Even as the whispers of ancient legends, sacred relics, hidden chambers, and coded manuscripts persist, the shadow of doubt remains. The more extraordinary a claim seems, whether a hidden tomb, a preserved bloodline, or sacred relics, the more skeptical observers become. For centuries, historians, theologians, and archaeologists have questioned the veracity of such evidence, pointing to numerous gaps in documentation, conflicting testimonies, and the fragility of oral tradition. And yet, it is precisely in these echoes of doubt that the mystery only deepens. Doubt does not destroy possibilities. On the contrary, it sharpens the imagination. When faced with conflicting sources or fragmentary evidence, the human mind is called to explore multiple layers of truth. Could a seemingly ordinary ossuary actually contain the remains of a historically significant person? Could a coded manuscript conceal detailed instructions leading to a hidden tomb? Could a modest chapel in a remote valley in southern France mark the resting place of relics long thought irrevocably lost? Each of these questions arises from doubt. Yet each of these possibilities fuels the enduring allure of discovery. The tension between faith and skepticism reflects the delicate balance skillfully maintained by the keepers of secrets. Those who guarded relics and knowledge were well aware that their claims might be questioned, misinterpreted, or even rejected by the general public. By encoding information, hiding tombs, and carefully protecting relics, they ensured that doubt would inextricably coexist with the process of preservation. In essence, the very act of concealment anticipated skepticism, making the survival of the secret more resilient to external influences. Doubt also stems from the inherent human tendency to mythologize. Legends of Mary Magdalene, the Templars, and hidden tombs are closely intertwined with historical facts, deep symbolism, and rich human imagination. Some researchers suggest that these stories grew over centuries, imbued with piety, fear, and various interpretations. And yet, even if embellished, the enduring consistency of certain motifs, symbols, relics, and coded manuscripts implies the existence of a kernel of truth, hidden but persistently breaking through layers of legend and conjecture. Consider the conflicting interpretations of artifacts or sites. Archaeological data can often support several hypotheses, each seemingly plausible but remaining incomplete. A burial stone may contain inscriptions interpreted differently by scholars. A manuscript, in turn, can be read in many different ways. The existence of multiple interpretations should not be viewed as a weakness. On the contrary, it serves as convincing evidence of skillful and deliberate concealment, designed to ensure that only a few, possessing deep insight, can penetrate the essence and uncover a more complex and profound narrative. Thus, doubt is elevated to the rank of a powerful tool, a kind of finest filter, through which truth can pass and be preserved, bypassing the need for hasty and superficial confirmation. Moreover, the very echoes of doubt inevitably prompt deep and comprehensive reflection on the very nature of faith. A legitimate question arises: how vast is the part of the historical narrative that humanity takes on faith without subjecting it to careful analysis or doubt? And how many traditions have been skillfully constructed to strengthen power structures or certain ideological doctrines, while many others, perhaps no less significant, have been dismissively rejected and relegated to the status of mere legends? The enigmatic hidden tomb and its associated numerous mysteries pose a challenge to modern consciousness, urging everyone to rethink established assumptions, carefully consider alternative versions of events, and deeply investigate what may have been deliberately hidden from view or simply forgotten. Even the advanced achievements of modern science and technology, such as radiocarbon dating, meticulous archaeological excavations, and complex forensic analysis, are unable to completely dispel the veil of doubt. Often, newly discovered artifacts and evidence only raise new questions, revealing anomalies rather than offering definitive and exhaustive answers. This state of affairs is quite natural, for mysteries carefully preserved for many centuries were never intended for simple and easy disclosure. They were created to coexist harmoniously with skepticism, to stimulate deep thought and continuous reflection, and to ensure that their comprehension would be the result of a purposeful and conscious search, rather than a matter of chance. Ultimately, the echoes of doubt serve as irrefutable evidence of the enduring, multifaceted complexity of hidden history. They persistently remind humanity that truth rarely appears in its absolute form, and that many mysteries persist precisely because they stubbornly resist superficial or hasty interpretation. Doubt is not an obstacle to knowledge, on the contrary. It is an integral part of the investigative journey itself. It invites every seeker to approach mysteries with unwavering patience, keen insight, and vivid imagination. In the quiet, almost sacred spaces, located at the intersection of faith and skepticism, the mysterious hidden tomb continues to await its hour, remaining as elusive as it has been for centuries. It offers the attentive eye only fragmented pieces, faint whispers, and enigmatic symbols that urge us to go beyond what is directly perceived and to glimpse something greater. Notably, some of humanity's most profound and significant stories reside not in majestic libraries or among celebrated monuments, but are hidden in an enveloping silence. For centuries, those who were honored with the trust of preserving sacred knowledge, guarding hidden tombs, and priceless relics, consciously chose the path of quiet preservation, preferring it to public recognition and disclosure. Silence itself, therefore, transformed into an effective tool, a reliable method of protection, and a sure way to ensure that invaluable heritage would be preserved for those chosen few who were able to approach it with unwavering patience and deep reverence. The very act of silence was deeply deliberate. The guardians of priceless relics and ancient bloodlines clearly understood that the world is not always ready to accept truth in its pristine form. Therefore, they consciously preferred discretion over public display, secrecy over loud proclamation. A faint whisper of history, an artfully coded manuscript, or a carefully hidden chamber possesses incomparably greater resilience and capacity for survival than an open public statement, which can easily be disputed, destroyed, or manipulated. Consequently, invaluable legacies were preserved, not in the maelstrom of public clamor, but in the cautious, deeply considered restraint of those who valued survival and preservation above all else, rather than momentary recognition. Let's consider the example of the hidden tomb itself, its exact location, its mysterious contents, and its profound significance might have been known only to a limited circle of individuals at any given time. Generations of guardians could succeed one another without revealing the full extent of this immense secret, thereby ensuring the secure protection of the sacred from the encroachments of political ambition, destructive greed, or doctrinal suppression. Every conscious act of silence served to strengthen the preservation process, allowing individual fragments of truth to survive in conditions where public records and open documents would have been doomed to destruction or oblivion. Furthermore, silence actively shaped and determined the very methods of knowledge transmission. Knowledge was carefully encoded in complex symbolism, in architectural forms, in ancient manuscripts, and in sacred rituals. Oral traditions were carefully, by word of mouth, passed from one trusted person to another. Relics found refuge in secret compartments or were moved across distant, unexplored lands. Even letters and maps were shrouded in ambiguity, ensuring that only those initiated into the complex system of preservation could discern their true, deeper meaning. Thus, silence was elevated to the status of a unique language, becoming both a method of communication and a reliable means of protection, skillfully interwoven with deep piety and subtle strategy. The preservation of invaluable heritage in silence extends far beyond purely physical artifacts. Spiritual teachings, valuable genealogical knowledge, and sacred memory were transmitted in such a way that they could successfully survive without attracting undue and unwanted attention. Mary Magdalene, The first disciples and their subsequent guardians deeply understood that the survival of truth often directly depended on its invisibility. To reveal too much would be to expose it to the risk of destruction. To reveal too little would be to condemn it to oblivion. Silence, however, represented that delicate, almost invisible balance that reliably protected against both destruction and oblivion. Even after many centuries, such a thoughtful approach has left distinct traces for those willing to look carefully and thoughtfully. Barely perceptible markers, skillfully woven into the architecture of churches, barely discernible inscriptions in ancient manuscripts, and symbols masterfully hidden in plain sight, all eloquently testify to a carefully developed and deliberate strategy. The legacy is undoubtedly present, yet it remains hidden from superficial view. Modern seekers, carefully studying these subtle hints, are confronted with a multi-layered puzzle that was designed both for robust protection and for profound instruction, offering its fragments only to those who possess sufficient patience and observation to recognize them. The survival of legacies carefully preserved in silence is inextricably linked to a deep understanding of the passage of time and the peculiarities of human behavior. Those entrusted with the mission of preserving these secrets possess the gift of foresight, allowing them to anticipate the coming centuries of change, social upheaval, and insatiable human curiosity. The activities of these guardians were guided by principles of caution, perseverance, and foresight, which ensured the preservation of valuable knowledge, precious relics, and highly revered tombs for many centuries after the disappearance of their creators or last guardians. Thus, silence itself transformed into a reliable repository for preservation, carefully transmitting memories and profound meaning from one generation to another. When people ponder these unspoken ancestral covenants, they come to understand that the hidden tomb represents not merely a material object. It is integrated into an extensive system of preservation, serving as a link in a chain formed by devoted guardians, meaningful symbols, and barely audible traditions that together ensure the continuity of the sacred narrative. The silence surrounding it is perceived as a deliberate, protective, and sacred phenomenon. It acts as silent proof of deep piety, perceptive wisdom, and foresight. Perhaps the most significant truth carried by these unspoken legacies is that the comprehension of truth or discovery does not always happen instantly. Deep understanding requires perseverance, insight, and humility. The tomb itself, valuable artifacts, and the ancient bloodline remain in their silent state, patiently awaiting those capable of grasping the profound meaning hidden behind subtle hints, carefully encrypted manuscripts, and traditions that have been diligently passed down from generation to generation for many centuries. Although the world may sink into oblivion, the legacy itself continues to exist, guarded by silence and the careful attention of many generations of guardians. Even in circumstances where sacred relics remain hidden, sepulchres are carefully disguised, and ancient manuscripts are presented in encrypted form, the central, immutable question remains: what is the true essence of faith? Faith, at its core, is inextricably linked to a state of uncertainty, the presence of doubt, and the perception of the invisible. The hidden tomb challenges established concepts of history, religious dogmas, and truth itself, reminding us that the true power of faith is often tested not through overt manifestations, but through what remains invisible and concealed from view. For many centuries, religious beliefs were shaped by what was explicit and officially approved. Religious institutions, canonical texts, and entrenched rituals established the frameworks of orthodoxy, providing an ordered structure for understanding sacred narratives. Nevertheless, the hidden tomb and its associated mysteries hint at the possibility that history may contain additional, deeper layers, holding truths that were deliberately concealed or carefully kept secret. These hidden aspects by no means diminish the value of faith. On the contrary, they add an extra layer of complexity, encouraging deeper contemplation and a willingness to simultaneously consider many different interpretations and possibilities. The stories of individuals like Mary Magdalene, as well as the Order of the Templars and entire generations of their successors, clearly demonstrate this complex interplay between empirical knowledge and deep faith. Their actions were dictated by deep faith, based on intuitive insights, sincere piety, and a clear understanding that certain truths might be either too powerful or too fragile for open disclosure. Their faith manifested actively, finding its expression in careful protection, diligent preservation, and conscious silence, rather than in public declarations or ostentatious displays. In this context, faith acquires both a spiritual and a deeply practical dimension, representing a firm commitment to preserving the sacred in conditions of uncertainty. Reflection and new discoveries act as inseparable companions of faith. To question something does not necessarily mean to deny, on the contrary. It can serve as a path to a deeper and more comprehensive understanding. The mere contemplation of the existence of a hidden tomb, invisible relics, or a sacred bloodline is a challenge for both deeply religious believers and inquisitive researchers, urging them to confront the limits of human knowledge, historical narrative, and established traditions. Questions arise. Can hidden truths coexist peacefully with faith? And could secrecy itself have been part of a divine plan, acting as a mechanism to test devotion, endurance, and insight? The hidden tomb provokes profound questions concerning the intersection of faith and the historical process. Does faith truly demand comprehensive understanding, or can it flourish by existing in harmony with unexplored mysteries? Do relics and bloodlines serve as direct evidence, or do they act as symbols of principles whose scale transcends ordinary human comprehension? Delving into these reflections, one is transported into a contemplative space where history, legends, and piety are inextricably intertwined, and where faith is tested, expanded in its boundaries, and acquires new, more precise contours. Even modern scientific thought clearly demonstrates this internal tension. Archaeologists, historians, and theologians engage in lively discussions regarding the available evidence, offering interpretations that range from deep skepticism to genuine admiration. Every new discovery, every unexplained anomaly, or newly found manuscript invariably rekindles questions about the essence of faith, the source of authority, and the nature of truth. The hidden tomb, whether it will ever be fully found or not, serves as a kind of mirror reflecting the eternal human desire to reconcile historical facts with faith and certainty with profound mystery. Ultimately, the enduring question of faith constantly reminds us that the quest for hidden knowledge is not merely an intellectual exercise. It possesses a deep spiritual essence, the path that winds through faint traditions, ancient relics, encrypted manuscripts, and hidden tombs is simultaneously an immersion into the very heart of faith, urging one to embrace uncertainty, experience reverence, and maintain an inquisitive curiosity. Faith, like the hidden tomb, continues to exist precisely because of its interaction with mystery, not despite it. Reflecting on this eternal question, people feel an inner call to harmoniously combine exploration with piety, skepticism with openness, and curiosity with deep respect. The hidden tomb and its associated mysteries are not merely historical puzzles. They act as powerful catalysts for profound reflection, guiding seekers to contemplate the complex interplay between knowledge, faith, and the sacred mysteries that have silently shaped the course of human civilization. For many millennia, despite the changing centuries, the hidden tomb retains its unspoken, almost magnetic influence on historical development, scientific research, and human imagination. Its intangible presence is felt not only in faint traditions, ancient manuscripts, and sacred relics, but also in the tireless curiosity and deep devotion of those who seek to comprehend what has been so carefully concealed. The tomb, in modern understanding, transcends its simple physical existence. It appears as an eternal symbol of profound mystery, rich heritage, and the complex interplay between concealment and discovery. The activities of modern archaeology and deep historical investigations, while offering intriguing hints of potential possibilities, have not yet led to the discovery of irrefutable, definitive evidence, which continues to elude researchers. A multitude of circumstantial evidence, such as secluded valleys in southern France, long-forgotten underground chambers beneath ancient churches, and carefully coded manuscripts stored in private collections, only reinforces the premonition of something deeply significant and hidden. However, despite all efforts and assumptions, the true essence of the tomb remains completely undisclosed. It retains its status as an intriguing mystery that demands not superficial or hasty study, but rather calls for thoughtful observation, deep interpretation, and reverent respect. Modern scholars and enthusiastic researchers tirelessly follow the threads skillfully laid through the centuries. Their work includes meticulous study of ancient maps, detailed analysis of ancient inscriptions, and careful tracking of subtle patterns left by followers of Mary Magdalene, the Templars, and other guardians of this sacred knowledge. Any, even the slightest, new discovery serves as a kind of fragment that enriches the broader narrative of the tomb. However, each such fragment, instead of providing exhaustive answers, only raises new questions, thereby revealing the unfathomable depth of the existing mystery. Notably, even in the realm of popular culture, the image of the hidden tomb invariably generates a quiet yet captivating allure. Numerous books, documentaries, and oral traditions actively explore its potential locations, the presumed relics it might hold, and the ancient bloodlines it perhaps guards. Nevertheless, it must be acknowledged that these interpretations, for all their persuasiveness and fascination, represent only individual facets of the overall historical tapestry. The true nature of the tomb, it seems, remains deliberately hidden, protected by centuries of meticulous guardianship and purposeful concealment of information. Its very elusiveness serves as eloquent testimony to the foresight and deep devotion of those who understood the critical importance of maintaining secrecy. In a sense, this enduring mystery of the tomb is a mirror of the deeply ingrained human yearning to connect with something sacred, carefully hidden, or truly eternal. Its rich legacy is valued not only for material artifacts or ancient manuscripts, but also for the countless questions it awakens in the minds of researchers, and for the unwavering devotion it continues to inspire. The very process of searching, in-depth study, and reverent contemplation of the hidden tomb transforms into a kind of ritual, representing a unique way of simultaneously interacting with history, faith, and the human imagination. Moreover, the hidden tomb acts as an important reminder of the inherent fragility of knowledge. For irrefutable evidence can be irrevocably lost. Geographical locations can undergo radical changes, and ancient traditions can be broken or forgotten. Nevertheless, it is precisely through meticulous and careful preservation that the continuous transmission of this sacred knowledge is ensured. The guardians who preceded the modern generation deeply understood that the passage of time, political intrigues, and human ambitions could pose a serious threat to sacred objects. By encoding, concealing, and carefully transmitting knowledge from generation to generation, they formed an entire bloodline of preservation that continues to guard both the tomb itself and all its associated mysteries to this day. Although the exact geographical location and specific contents of the tomb still remain officially unconfirmed, its invisible influence continues to be felt in the most subtle and unobvious ways. Encrypted symbols carved in stone, barely discernible inscriptions, and carefully coded manuscripts continue to speak silently through the centuries, prompting deep reflection, meticulous study, and sincere reverence. Consequently, the tomb appears not merely as an object of historical curiosity. It is a living, breathing testament to the astonishing resilience of secrecy, deep piety, and the eternal human striving to preserve all that is sacred. When a modern researcher turns their gaze to the hidden tomb, they are invisibly invited to follow its traces with exceptional patience and utmost caution. Every discovered manuscript, every preserved relic, and even the faint whisper of ancient legends becomes an integral part of this ongoing journey. It is a journey that skillfully connects distant ancient times with the present, and which in turn contributes to the formation of a deeper understanding of history, faith, and the enduring mysteries that lie at the heart of our world. The tomb continues to remain hidden from prying eyes, yet its invisible presence is deeply felt, reminding everyone that certain truths retain their essence precisely because they do not lend themselves to easy and quick revelation. Thus, the hidden tomb continues its silent but significant existence, acting as a symbol of secrecy, deep piety, and unceasing human curiosity. It silently awaits those who are genuinely willing to listen to the faint whispers of time, who are capable of tirelessly following the subtle, almost invisible traces, and who approach the sacred with genuine reverence, boundless patience, and a developed imagination. The hidden tomb, along with all its relics, ancient manuscripts, and associated bloodline, serves as a powerful reminder that some mysteries may not be meant for complete and final unraveling. Their true power lies not in instantaneous revelation, but in the quiet yet persistent insistence of questions, in the faint guidance of centuries' whispers, and in the meticulous preservation by generations who deeply understood the sacred importance of secrecy. To follow the path of these mysteries means to embrace an endless journey. It is a journey that spans centuries, encompasses diverse landscapes, and penetrates the deepest reaches of human imagination. Each new discovery, each interpreted symbol, and each successfully deciphered manuscript adds its unique layer to the overall understanding. However, despite this, each answer obtained inevitably generates new, even deeper questions. The tomb itself never remains static. Its history dynamically evolves with each new generation that approaches it, constantly changing its form in response to careful preservation, deliberate suppression, or irresistible human curiosity. Thus, the hidden tomb appears not so much as a final destination in research, but rather as the path itself, a narrative that unfolds unhurriedly and demands boundless patience, keen insight, and deep reverence from the seeker. The search for these carefully hidden truths is equally an inner journey of self-discovery and a profound exploration of the historical past. By tracing mysterious symbols, heeding the faint whispers of centuries, and contemplating coded manuscripts, seekers inevitably confront their own established assumptions, deeply rooted beliefs, and the boundless possibilities of their imagination. Faith, deep doubt, and insatiable curiosity merge closely, forming a unique space where the past is not merely known through books and documents, but is also felt as a living, profound experience. The mystery itself, surrounding the hidden tomb, transforms into a kind of mirror, reflecting not only the deep enigmas of bygone eras, but also the eternal questions that people invariably carry in their hearts. In this long search, even deep silence becomes an integral part of the great journey. The lack of information, expressed in numerous gaps in historical records, lost or deliberately hidden chapters of chronicles, and artificially created ambiguities, serves as a powerful stimulus, prompting deep and thoughtful contemplation. What is carefully preserved in deep shadow turns out to be no less significant than the information openly recorded in the bright light of history. Every faint whisper, every delicate hint represents the finest thread, firmly connecting ancient guardians with modern researchers, offering them hints of understanding, but at the same time invariably protecting the sacred inviolability of the mystery. Perhaps the most valuable lesson that the enigma of the hidden tomb teaches us lies in a deep sense of humility. No research, however exhaustive or diligent, can force an ancient secret to fully reveal its coverings. The ancient guardians, living in past centuries, developed a system for preserving these mysteries with exceptional foresight, thereby ensuring that the sacred content would survive any direct and superficial understanding. To walk this enigmatic path means to consciously accept the fact that some truths must inevitably remain partially hidden from direct view. It is also an acknowledgement that the very process of searching possesses deep, self-sufficient value, and that true understanding is a continuous movement, and by no means a fixed destination. Legends, ancient manuscripts, mysterious relics, and the faint whispers of the past are more than just disparate pieces of evidence. They represent true invitations. These invitations urge people to deep contemplation, to pose sharp questions, to meditative reflection, and to the free flight of imagination. They call for interaction with history in a way that is filled with patience, deep reverence, and always remains open to countless possibilities and new interpretations. The hidden tomb itself, with its silent and persistent insistence, challenges everyone who dares to go beyond the obvious, to explore the invisible facets of reality, and to pay homage to those noble guardians who carefully protected these sacred mysteries for many centuries. Ultimately, This great journey through the labyrinths of history turns out to be truly endless. Each new seeker of mysteries brings their unique chapter to it. Each interpretation becomes just one of many reflections, and each moment of deep contemplation serves as a continuation of that grand story that began many millennia ago. Although the tomb itself remains invisible and hidden, its silent message continues to resonate. To those who can listen carefully, it whispers through time itself, teaching them patience, steadfast devotion, and an awareness of the deep, powerful force of carefully guarded secrets. Tonight, closing your eyes, you can imagine this hidden tomb, silently resting deep underground. Its priceless legacy is passed down from generation to generation through faint whispers, complex symbols, and unspoken but persistent devotion. One should imagine the countless generations of guardians who protected it, the encrypted manuscripts carefully concealing its secrets, and the picturesque landscapes of southern France where its invisible yet palpable influence quietly persists. And in the process of this deep, silent contemplation, one should realize that this journey itself is continuous. It is constantly unfolding, always remains shrouded in mystery, and invariably invites those who are ready to follow its subtle, truly endless path. The hidden tomb represents not just one page of history, but a living, ongoing saga, a profound reflection on secrecy, on the power of faith, and on the inherent human impulse to preserve all that is sacred. And, delving into these reflections, each person becomes an integral part of an ancient bloodline, driven by curiosity and reverence, joining an endless journey where mystery itself acts as the most resilient and enduring legacy of all possible.